Welcome everybody. I hope everybody is doing well. This is a second to last showcase of the year. We got the 2022 schedule already up online, so we'll talk about that a little bit later on. So I hope everybody's doing well this afternoon or this evening, or for others in the morning, wherever you may be in the world. We're here to talk about deep tech. Today's showcase is actually a nice little full circle for us. We started with actually our first showcase ever was a space showcase. We launched it in December 2020. So now we're just in November, just about a year later, and we're doing our second space showcase. Today we decided to focus simultaneously on space as well as AI. And as is our custom, we're going to have an open topic session as well. So without further ado, let's get started. We'll start with a little brief presentation talking about a little bit of background about us, our origins, and what our focus is, and why this community has come together. Our vision is shared with everybody else here. We're here to help bring more deep tech into market. That's a pretty broad stroke. Specifically, we're focused in deep tech outside of the life sciences. But the reason that that's necessary is because 95% of all startups fail, and within that number, or 90 to 95%, when you factor in what a deep tech startup is up against, then really it's an additional challenge that another startup doesn't have, because you have an extended R&D period, which is expensive, it's long, and if you don't get the right partners for it, then you can really be challenged to actually make it to market. Even when the technology is mature, let's say, first and foremost, you have a reality in deep tech, which is that it can apply to multiple markets, multiple segments, multiple industries, whatever word you want to use. The idea of foundational technology is that it can apply across multiple markets in a lot of cases, and that's as much of an advantage as it is a challenge, because then it starts to really depend on how good you are at your B&D, your business development, because obviously the R&D is fantastic. Not that that's not a challenge in and of itself, but to go and to explain that to market is a challenge that another startup might not necessarily have. Everybody has challenges with content creation and creating the story around your technology and why it's going to make the impact that you believe it's going to make. But sometimes it's a little edgier, a little more challenging, because you have to educate a whole market sometimes. That's the last thing, is the timing is really important. And now that we're leaving the lab, we have to know how to go about that. What we have done, one of our core focuses for the Deep Tech Showcase as a business development firm is we've curated an ecosystem. Startups, on the one hand, that are innovating, on the other hand, you have stakeholders. And this is important because at the end of the day, both sides typically are looking for one another. However, it's not always such a simple task to go and find that next gen technology which can help your organization, or could be a good investment opportunity or merger and acquisition opportunity for your organization, or for that matter, could change to the face of your governmental organization, the needs that you come across. So what we've done is we've focused for the stakeholder community to be one of three, I guess, profiles. One would be a government tech scout from public sector, whether it's federal, state, or city, looking to engage with innovative companies that are developing agile in an agile fashion, and also are focused on simultaneously on a commercial market, but could potentially have that dual use capabilities in the government side. Tech scouts, whether it's a government prime or whether it's a major corporation looking for a subcontractor, looking to be a subcontractor, or looking for merger and acquisition or CVC type investment. And then, of course, investors that are looking for technologies that maybe take a little bit longer to go to market. However, if played correctly, will have a much bigger impact. And the reason we have the need for the ecosystem, at least what we've seen and the feedback we've gotten from our stakeholder community, is that it's not always easy to find a tech company. One of the companies presenting is fond of saying it's an eagle and a needle stack. It's really hard to find the right startup or the right technology company which is addressing your needs. And if you're an investor, to find that right startup that's going to make a real big impact on the market and create an incredible ROI for your organization. So what anchors our community are the events like today. We have one event per month on average. We have the occasional off-the-cuff event as well, like we're going to be having next month for AFWERX winners. We'll talk about that in just a minute. And the community gathers around the industry events. Obviously, not everybody attends everything, but when it's of relevance to you, for instance, this community today is focused on space and AI, but we also have the agnostic industry set in the first session. This is part of our services, the events and the ecosystem, but we also have a strategies division that focuses on companies that are trying to plan their go-to-market and want to do some key market research, plan out their business model, plan out their ideal customer and how their 1, 2, 3 step to finding a beachhead or a secondary market. We also have a studios team, which helps with building pitches, putting together one-pagers and other basic marketing materials. Of course, the guided introductions, whether you're tech scout or whether you're an investor, pitch events like today, and of course, marketing. Marketing as a service is a relatively new service that we added, which helps companies that are looking to have an idea of who their profile is, their customer is, and just needs help in reaching out to them. And that's where we provide the added value. Our business package, we work typically with companies for 9 months. I speak to the stakeholder community today. You're going to be meeting a lot of startups today that are in different process of working with the Deep Tech Showcase. Maybe some of them are also, testing it out and seeing what it's like. So you're going to be seeing companies that have been either working with us for extended period of time or are totally new to it, and that's also exciting. So be patient with the pitches, focus on the technology, and try to hear beyond the slides, because of course companies only have 5 minutes to pitch. Here's the team. A lot of us are online today. We try to attend in high capacity. My name is Josh Barone. I'm the Managing Director of the Deep Tech Showcase. And we have a really incredible team on the business side and also the professional services side, which are helping these startups and also helping these organizations to find the startups. Our schedule through the end of 2022 is as follows. Today we have Space and AI. Last event of 2021 calendar year is a focus on information communication technology, and then we restart the year with some new and some repeat industry sets, like Industry 4.0, trading simulations is new this year, microelectronics, energy, smart cities, the third wave of AI, aerospace and defense, communication connectivity, advanced materials, future of computing, autonomous systems in space, as well as one unique and actually invite-only showcase, which is going to be for any company that has recently won an AFWERX Phase 1. This is a closed event exclusively for those companies. And on the stakeholder side, there will be a panel of Air Force personnel who are looking to potentially engage with these startups. So that's going to be on Tuesday, December 14th. And if you're interested to have more information about that, you can email one of us from the team. That's one of 2 joint programs that we run together with our sister company, Eagle Point Funding. Deep Tech Showcase, as you know, a business development firm for deep tech startups. Eagle Point Funding is a grant consultancy firm helping deep tech startups to get non-dilutive funding from R&D programs from the federal government. We also run a second program called StratFi and TACFi Match Funding Initiative, which is helping companies that are eligible for a match funding program for the United States Air Force called StratFi or TACFi. Strategic Funding Initiative or Tactical Funding Initiative, which are asking for private investors to match government dollars, which can go all the way up to $60 million combined for one company. On the low side of things, I believe it's $750,000. But we'll see the new program set to launch in January, February next year. So just a quick word on MOU Club. The MOU Club, like I mentioned, is a joint program between us and our sister company, where the idea is to help companies that have won an AFWERX Phase 1. AFWERX, for those that are new to the term, is a small business innovation research Phase 1 grant for our R&D contract from the United States government, specifically from the United States Air Force. And companies, as part of that Phase 1, are tasked to get a signed MOU from a potential customer from the Air Force in order to have secondary phase funding, where the purpose of this funding is to actually engage in a contract with the United States Air Force. There are a lot of opportunities along the way here, but in order to go from stage 1 to stage 2, these companies need to get a signed MOU. And we run a program that actually helps walk them through that, giving one-on-one guidance and making sure that we're helping them both through the Deep Tech Showcase community, but also from finding ideal customers. The United States Air Force, anybody who is new to the world, is a massive organization, and there are many different Air Force personnel who are looking to engage with startups if they find something on a relevant industry set. We have a cohort that meets once a week, or more or less, over a course of 12 sessions. And like I mentioned, we're having a AFWorks showcase, which is exclusively for those companies that have won that. So that's a unique program. It's good to share this out with the community. We run a couple of unique programs throughout the year, which go beyond what we're running on the monthly showcase. So anybody who's curious about it, feel free to reach out and we can have an extended discussion about it. So without further ado, we're going to be jumping right into today's topic, which is the Space and AI Showcase. We are joined with an incredible panel. We have Mark Brzezinski from General Dynamics, from Diamond Edge Ventures, Bob Christopher, from Ditra, Christopher Brazier, from TDK Ventures, Tina Tasako-Hawang, from G7 Ventures, Samir Golami. And at this session, we're going to be hearing from 4 companies: Stavati Aerospace, Ateo Systems, Black Sands Incorporated, and Witricity. After that, we're going to move on to our second session, and we're going to be introducing the panelists at each session, and also as well the companies. So just take a quick eyeball test on it and take a quick glance over it. As we go back to it, we're going to be, again, focusing on this session, the first session, which is industry agnostic. So we're going to jump into space as the second session, and then AI as the third session. But first, we start with something which is a diverse industry set, to hear from some really incredible companies and hopefully get some good insights from this awesome panel. So without further ado, Yuval, are we going to get started now, or do you want to do a quick roundabout with the panel?
No, we're great. We're great on time. We could just start off with the introductions, and then we'll get going with the pitches.
Okay, so please, panelists, introduce yourselves one at a time. Let's start with, as it appears on the screen, or as it appeared before, Mark from General Dynamics.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Mark Brzezinski. I'm with General Dynamics Mission Systems. I'm the tech director for our innovation sourcing network. Mission Systems is a large-scale integrator, as well as an OEM of encryption and spaceborne platforms and things like that. The innovation sourcing network, my role is I sit between our internal teams and our suppliers, and I try to connect the dots and help fill solution gaps from our growing roster of partners. So my goal here is to just learn about some of the innovative work that's being done by the companies that are presenting today, and then try to find matches and fits with where our business is going. So thank you all for your time in advance.
Awesome. Thanks, Mark. One unique investor we get the privilege to add to the panel last second is Cassandra Carruthers from Upheaval Investments. Cassandra, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure thing. Thanks for having me. Nice to see everyone. I'm Cassandra from Upheaval Investments. We're a Chicago-based early-stage deep tech venture capital fund spun out of a family office. And we invest out of an evergreen fund across sectors into deep and frontier technologies, hardware and software, inclusive of aerospace and AI, that have fundamental innovation at their core and massive potential for scale. And we invest globally.
Awesome. Thank you, Cassandra. Tina from TDK.
Hi, everyone. Pleasure to be here. I'm Tina Tosako-Wong. I'm the investment director at TDK Ventures. We are a corporate ventures arm of TDK Corporation, an electronics component system company. We invest in early stage startups from areas such as clean tech, energy tech, mobility, industry 4.0, connectivity, and so on. So we invest globally. Sometimes we lead, sometimes we co-invest. And we look forward to not just giving the money, but also finding synergy and try to make the right introduction for the portfolio companies to our corporation so that they can help scale the company into a very big ventures in the future.
Awesome, awesome. Samira from G7 Ventures. I think we still have you on mute.
Thank you. Yes, I was on mute. Yes, I'm Samira. I'm a founder of G7 Ventures. We are an emerging fund, and our inspiration is based on World Economical Forum. That's why I'm also part of, I'm partnering with Deep Tech at this moment, because we believe that the future of technology can't be without governing it and working with the government. So, so we believe that, so we invest also mainly in the tech. And yeah, and today I'm excited to see what's coming on the stage.
Awesome, awesome. From Defensive Threat Reduction Agency, I believe Christopher's calling in. Christopher, can you hear us?
Hey, good day, everybody. My name is Christopher Brazier. I'm the Chief Technology Officer for the Defense Threat Reduction Agency, and I'm also the Department Chief for Mission IT Infrastructure Systems and Services. And what I'm doing on this call is really trying to seek out the best, latest, and the greatest technology and technology companies to work with and bring those technologies for bear to use for my customers across this agency.
Awesome, thank you. Bob Christopher from Diamond Edge Ventures.
Morning, good afternoon, everybody. Bob Christopher, Diamond Edge Ventures. We are the venture capital arm of Mitsubishi Chemical Holdings Company. So, and we touch a lot of different industries. We made 7 different investments so far. We usually get involved in seed to Series A. We invest 1 million up to 5 million. We have an evergreen fund. We actually just expanded our fund this year. And we also have a new frontier fund that's exploratory, looking at areas that new technologies that may or may not align with our business units, but are interesting for us to participate in. So lots of interesting things. You'll see a lot of activities from our company this next calendar year, including we're doing a number of potential acquisitions. So stay tuned. Nice to meet everybody here.
Awesome, thanks, Bob. So that's a panel, fantastic panel. Let's get started with the first company. We'll be hearing from 4 different companies in the open topic. Yuval, who do we have up first?
I was muted. We're gonna have Richicity pitching right now.
And Tom is pitching. Hi, Tom.
Hi, thank you for an opportunity for me to introduce Richicity. So Richicity is a company that's based in Boston, spun out of MIT, and we provide wireless charging technology for electric vehicles and various other mobile electric things. Can you go to the next slide? Yeah, we have a lot of stuff packed into 5 minutes, so I just go through them very quickly. Can you go? Yeah. So as you know, electric vehicles really taking off around the world, and renewable energy is really picking up, and electrification is like unstoppable across the globe. Especially in China, Europe, and then U.S. and California. So we're trying to cater to this area right now. Okay. And as electric vehicles really proliferate, what happens is that the people who's not really used to plugging in the vehicle all the time at home and various places, it's a cumbersome thing. It's difficult, dirty. Sometimes with the COVID, it's dirty. So we Electricity really provides the wireless charging technology, which takes that issue out. So it automatically charge. All you have to do is just park the car, and it automatically charges. So it's really great for convenience as well as commercial vehicles and autonomous vehicles as well. The technology itself, was invented by MIT, and also there's a patent portfolio by Qualcomm as well as Electricity. It enables wireless charging transfer of high power SAE standard has defined 3, 7, and 11 kilowatts of power, and you can charge over a little bit of the distance with a gap between the car and the ground pad, power through materials, and then we have our technology enables dynamic charging, moving charging, and as well as um, charging in a reverse direction, which caters to the V2G requirements. BMW 2 years ago has launched the BMW 530e. I don't have time for showing this video, but you can Google and search for BMW 530e wireless charging. It shows how it works. And then recently we have seen an announcement from Hyundai. GV60 is a car that they announced with the wireless charging coming up in Korea and China and the United States in the next couple of years. And then China's premier Rolls-Royce, Hongqi, also has been announced, and we will see a number of announcements coming up soon, as well as a number of car makers making a wireless charged EV in the next couple of years. Okay. Not only passenger cars, but we also cater to commercial vehicles, last mile delivery vehicles, higher power, and it really makes everything automated and takes out the clumsy cable, takes out the maintenance issue of the cable, and then reduces operational cost for EV fleets. Okay. And our company started with a licensing model of IP licensing. We have over 1,100 patent in our portfolio, as well as the fundamental patents that enables this wireless charging using magnetic resonance. But we're also making products toward passenger vehicles. We're going to have a charger products available in 2023, and then we'll expand to these commercial spaces, public parking lots, taxi queuing, and then we're also making high power charging for buses. There are people who's doing dynamic charging. That's also in our roadmap as well. Okay. The charging itself is, the technology itself can be applied to multiple areas. We have licensees that are making wireless chargers for factory automation, automatic guided vehicles and AMRs, last mile delivery, as I mentioned about, and then e-mobility, e-bikes, e-scooters can be charged wirelessly, and consumer electronics as well. So what we're looking for is, investors and also partners who's looking to leverage this technology to create mobility as a service, material handling, retail delivery services, and so on, from infrastructure to embedding into a car. And then if people are looking at the smart cities and so on, I think it's a great possibility for us. We're also making application to the Army cohort program that Josh mentioned about earlier. So if you're interested in talking to us, please let me know. And the company based in Watertown, we're expanding very quickly. And we love to find people who's interested in leveraging this technology to, make a seamless automated charging for an expanded EV world. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom. You pack in a lot in 5 minutes. That's incredible. Let's open it up to the panel. I think Bob from Diamond Edge Ventures from Mitsubishi has a question.
Sure. So what is your limitations on power? How much can you support? I saw different profiles of scooters, robots, cars.
Sure. So actually technology works in all kinds of power levels. Consumer electronics, 15 watts, 50 watts, e-scooters and so on are powered at typically like 80 to 200 watts. AGVs are powered at 1 kilowatt, sometimes 3 kilowatts if it's a big one. And then car SAE standards has been set such that it supports 3, 7, and 11 for now, and it's expanded to 22. We have people, who's designed buses go up to like 300 kilowatts, and then one of our partners making a 200 kilowatt charging system for EV ships. So the technology can scale really, to a small power to a big power.
Just a follow-up quick question on that. Do you know if you're using for your wireless charging, if you're using GAN on GAN, what is your kind of underlying wireless power management? How are you managing that from a material standpoint, or do you know?
Well, I think right now the GaN is not necessary. We use silicon carbide technology. GaN might be, might be coming into the future, but our current focus is cost reduce, right? Reduce the cost so that it can really, scale and enable, consumer products as well as commercial deployment. So our focus is on making sure that our charger can be, grid compatible with ISO 15118, and OCCP compliant, so that it can be connected to the grid and controlled, and then the lowest cost as much as possible.
Great, thank you.
Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, hi, Mark Rosinski, General Dynamics Mission Systems. Does your technology require anything to be retrofitted to the vehicles, or is that charging plate or receptacle already part of the vehicle designs?
That's a good question. We have a number of car companies, as I mentioned, like BMW and McLaren, FAW, and also Hyundai. These companies have actually made the product to be embedded into the car, so that it was part of the SOP system, and the charging receiver side basically goes through magnetic resonance and then receives the power into a rectifier and then charges the battery directly. So it's embedded into a car. But we're also making a retrofit system to be announced pretty soon. But Tesla Model 3 we have retrofitted, and we can do a retrofit to a number of commercial vehicles. So we can do two paths. But SOP programs takes a long time, so we're looking for a chance to identify a quick deployment with a commercial target vehicle, and we can retrofit using maybe CCS port or CHAdeMO port into the vehicle.
Hey, thank you.
Okay, just one last question that appeared in the chat is from Joseph Fryer from the United States Air Force. He says, this is interesting, but the challenge, I assume, is the infrastructure for the pads needed for charging. Do we see any funding in the recent infrastructure bill that could help your efforts?
Absolutely, that's what we're looking for. And infrastructure bill came up. DOE, is spending a lot of money on EV electrification. We have money coming through, like California, Energy Commission. So we are looking for that potential. So we have a prototype available that we can retrofit into a car. So it requires car company, this funding agencies, and then fleet operators to work together with us. So we are starting that right now. So if you have ideas, interest, please let us know.
Awesome. Tina, you want to ask the last question?
Yeah, quick question. Can you talk a little bit about the competition and in terms of the charging speed right now? How do you compare to the fast charger and so on?
Yeah, so right now the SAE standard has been set so that it really enables the level 2 charging, AC charging up to 11 kilowatt, but fast charging like DC charging, 50 kilowatts or 100 kilowatts is available from some companies that we're still working to negotiate on licensing, and we're also making our own charging system. So the key is the technology evolution would allow us to do both the fast charging as well as AC charging. And it's all depending on the use case and the cost and how it benefits the end user. So that's where we really want to work with people who has great ideas about utilizing wireless charging, so we can talk about the exact fit for such an application.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tom. Make sure you pay attention to the comments in the chat. You have a couple interesting requests there. And we're going to move on to our next presentation. Thanks, Tom.
Okay, thank you.
All right, next up is Black Sands, and pitching will be Nathan Paul, who's president and CEO. Nathan, are you there?
I am. Can you hear me?
Great.
Good. Thank you so much. So Black Sands is, next slide, please. Zero trust cybersecurity without the complexity. This is very important for today's space marketplace, as well as AI and every other industry out there, as everything is digitizing. And from development to deployment across our galaxy, everything needs to be connected. The problem is current connectivity and security solutions are leaving it extremely vulnerable. The current solutions are complex, static, and blind. They increase cost, risk, and cause gridlock. So every enterprise must address the complexity issue. Next slide. And this, next slide. This has to do with digitization. Digitization itself cannot scale. There are longer, next slide, please. Longer and longer deployment times, increasing number of personnel that are required to manage these connections, too much access when they're made, and not enough visibility into whatever network that we are dealing with. This causes increased cost and risk with every connection. Next slide. That's why the White House has created an executive order mandating zero trust to be driven across the entire federal government. The problem is that zero trust actually adds more complexity to already complex systems. Now, this is impacting the federal government, critical supply chains, and regulated industries. They're demanding new, not repurposed technologies. Next slide. DISA is one of the first RFIs to come out with this zero trust requirement. What is important in their RFI to understand is that they are requiring user to application connectivity control. Next slide. This is very difficult for the existing operations to make it. Our competitors, they are basically adding a policy layer to existing technologies, which is adding more complexity. In addition, the last line of the slide I want to focus in on is that the existing technologies are only able to get network to application connectivity control. They cannot meet that requirement. Whereas Black Sands reduces that complexity and meets the requirement of true user to application connectivity control. Next slide. We're able to do this with our patented separation of powers architecture. It is software. We have a receiver on the right side. It creates invisibility for all these connections. We have a cloud management system that actually sets up the connections, and we deploy certificates on PCs, IoT devices, mobile, whatever is connecting in. And like the old time telephone operators that make a point, click, 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 we establish point-to-point encrypted connections as needed from device to device. And we never touch the data. This is true zero trust architecture built on our patented separation of powers architecture. Next slide. We're able to reduce deployment times from months to minutes, reduce the number of personnel. You don't have to have specialty training to manage the system. We're able to increase the security, invisible edge, encrypted point-to-point connection. We never touch the data. And we tell the full story, who, what, where, when, and why in real time in a way that the customer can use it. Next slide. The cybersecurity market is typically seen as very crowded, but break it up into hardware, software, and services, and you see that we fit in the software segment. This software can be broken up even further into threat detection, analytics, and automation. Black Sands software-defined connectivity control is the first truly proactive, scalable, zero trust solution that fully automates, can work with AI, provides unparalleled analytics, and even threat detection to enterprises. Next slide. We've proven this technology out over a number of years. We've won numerous awards, including the energy vertical and cyber verticals at Plug and Play, smart cities verticals at leading cities. We've been through product red team testing with GE's Power Group for the remote management of power plants. We've been onboarding strategic integrators for global support. With Accenture, we applied for an IWRP for 5G connectivity control for their supply chain, for the Navy supply chain. That award is awaiting funding. And now with the White House executive order, we're pushing into the federal space and really appreciative of Eagle Point funding for this opportunity. Next slide. Our previous customers have been on the commercial side. We focused in on global manufacturing as well as critical infrastructure. Next slide. And now our market focus is expanding to include federal zero trust cybersecurity in their federal supply chains, civilian and DoD agencies, while maintaining our focus with the commercial side with supply chain digitization, critical infrastructure, smart cities, and now we've recently added banking and fintech. Next slide. There are two opportunities that we're looking for today for partnership. One is deployment opportunities. Because this technology is ready today, we can deploy very, very quickly, bringing true zero trust requirements to whatever agency that needs it, as well as bringing our bouncer, which eliminates ransomware, malware, and the like. Next slide. We're also looking for partners on the investment side of the house to help us close federal contracts, expand partnerships, and expand the commercial contracts. We've currently raised 1.5 million in a safe 20% discount with a $15 million cap and looking for a bridge round right now of 750,000. I thank you for your time. We are Black Sands, zero trust connectivity without the complexity.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Nathan. Opening up the floor for questions. Samira, go ahead.
Let me unmute myself. Yeah, hi. Great presentation, though. Cybersecurity in such a short, minutes to explain it. It's an artwork. So, great one, Nathan. I'm curious about. I have a lot of questions, but I keep it a little bit short because I know I want to give a chance to other people. I'm really interested in what you do. So, first of all, I'm interested in your vision, where you're heading with this. And then second is your competition in the market. I'm curious actually which vendors would be interested in the cybersecurity market to maybe buy you eventually. And because the cybersecurity is also very crowded, but is also extremely growing market. Just give me some thoughts about your competition market and who are they and who might be interested in you to buying your company, and overall vision. Where are you heading with this?
So the competition today, our biggest competition, especially in the federal space, are the existing big players like your Palo Altos and the Junipers and the like. These competitors are also our exit potential. What we have found is that instead of creating new technology, they like to purchase new technology. And so our job is to prove that out in the marketplace. So our vision is to expand this technology as rapidly as possible, both on the commercial and the federal side. Strategically, short term, we want to get federal contracts, potentially some AFWorks and some of the smaller contracts, that then we can go after the very, very large contracts in the federal space and the like. We also have a global focus already, working with some very large cities around the world, as well as global manufacturing and critical infrastructure.
I would be interested to talk to you later after this, so let's just connect. I come from cybersecurity market, so we can make it.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Go ahead, Cassandra.
Thanks. Thanks, Nathan. Great presentation. Just one quick curiosity is wondering if this has anything to do with secure access server edge. And then my main question is, what are the main attack vectors that you're protecting against? And maybe the better way to phrase it would just be, which attack vectors do you remain vulnerable to?
Very, very good question. So yeah, the SASE, the Secure Access Service Edge, is kind of one of those categories we fit into. Our technology adds a significant amount of functionality beyond that. We actually, without getting too deep, we're controlling the full stack from the network layer to the application layer, which is very, very unique in what we're doing. And so what that means is we drastically reduce the threat vectors that are available. So instead of connecting to the world and trying to filter out the bad guys, by proactively figuring out who you are and what you have access to before making a connection, and then brokering a point-to-point connection, we instantly reduce all of that kind of attack. So things like, advanced persistent threats, things like, man-in-the-middle attacks, any of these sorts of attacks where they're just kind of banging away on the edge, looking for vulnerabilities, scanning, that doesn't even happen with our system because we're invisible. And then with a second piece of our technology, which we call Bouncer, which is an intelligent DNS, we're able to rid things like ransomware and the like. So what we don't do is we don't protect the endpoints. So we're not scanning your PC looking for viruses and things of that nature. We're also not touching the packets themselves. We're not looking into the payload because we don't touch the data. Our job is to create the secure point-to-point connection.
Awesome. Any other question for the panelists? If not, I'm going to ask one more question from Avi. I was actually going to ask your question, so maybe we'll get Avi a chance to speak. Avi Lindenbaum is an investor. Has a question for you. Put it in the chat, but maybe we'll give him the opportunity to ask live. There we go. Go ahead, Avi.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry for the difficulty. Great presentation, very interesting stuff for sure. How channel ready is your solution, either now or in the future, to deploy to some of the customers like DoD and the intelligence community that you're talking about? It's probably best to go through some of the primes. So I'm curious as to how deployable it is through the channel.
Yes, we're extremely deployable through the channels. That's what we've been spending pretty much last year focusing in on, is developing a relationship with these primes, the Accentures, the Booz Allens, the SAICs, and the like. Those are some of them. We are definitely open for others. We've been working with some telcos globally as well. Our job is not to expand our company and produce a ton of employees. We would rather use the global integrators and primes to handle the deployment and level 1 and 2 support on this.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you for all your questions, and thank you for the presentation. That was Nathan Paul, President and CEO from Black Sands. Any questions, you can reach out to Nathan directly while he's on the chat, over LinkedIn, email. And Nathan, you have quite a few questions in the Q&A and also in the chat, so make sure you take a look at those before you sign off. Next up, my pleasure. Next up is Raj Kumar, who's CEO of Ateo Systems.
Yes, hi, everyone. Yep, can everyone hear me? Thank you for the introduction. Can everyone hear me clearly? Just testing.
All good.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Hi, everyone. My name is Rajan Kumar, CEO founder of Ateo Systems. We're using solvent-free electrode manufacturing using radiation curable polymers. Next slide. So everything in your life that has a button requires a battery. Your phone, your car, all the electronics around you. Unfortunately, these devices and the batteries that power them are facing rising prices and limited supply. In fact, it is forecasted in 2022 the battery shortage will double the current microchip shortage. And what's more important is that the US will face both economic and security challenges because of this, as only 1% of batteries are manufactured in the US. This is happening because of lack of innovation in manufacturing. The current process of manufacturing batteries has remained unchanged since the 1980s. It is a process that is slow, toxic, expensive, and limiting in design. And using that technology, it will take 30 years to meet the global demand of energy storage. Next slide. The primary problem lies in the curing of key battery components. So the image on the left shows how batteries are manufactured today. These process of taking these inks coated, and they go through these long thermal runners to remove unwanted toxic solvents. At Ateos, we have the solution. We have patented a process that uses light instead of heat. You can see in our process on the right, we're able to shrink this to less than 10 meters, reducing the cost significantly. We have proven this process can manufacture those key components 10 times faster, 5 times cheaper, without toxic solvents, and without compromising performance. And what's really exciting is that our process is so rapid and versatile, the design applications are limitless. And if you were to outfit every existing gigafactory with our technology, it would only take 2 years to meet that global demand. Next slide. So what's compelling about our technology is that it's chemistry agnostic. So it can be adaptable to any type of size and battery, thereby giving our company the opportunity to impact the global battery market of over $120 billion. And we're already doing this, providing batteries for small, powerful wearable sensor valued at $300 million markets. And we're going to scale the technology to impact electric vehicles and grid storage valued over $50 billion. Next slide. And so that's why I'm really excited to announce we've actually released our first battery product, Enercom. It's a high energy density battery using our process and is getting significant traction as a power supply for wearables and sensor. You can see right here, one of our batteries already. Oops, upside down. So this battery has 50% more energy per area. It's optimized for wireless communication, which impacts over 95% of IoT devices. And what's exciting, it can be robotically mounted, enabling our customers to move from 2 minutes a year to over 200. Next slide. We're already currently producing batteries for leading manufacturers in diabetic monitoring, digital shelving displays for retail display. This market has blown up because of inability to hire. So you have these displays that automatically update pricing instead of having someone do it manually. And then asset tracking for shipping companies. And we see on average, our customers are looking to purchase over 12 million units per year, an average selling price about less than $1. And we're able to generate at a margin of 35%. And just give you context of why our customers are buying. This right here is a asset tracking patch that goes onto a FedEx box. Right here is a competitor battery that takes up 90% of the device. With this product here, Enercom, it reduces the area by 2x but we have 4 times more energy density compared to them. And that's why our customers are buying. And this is why our company is now on pace to generate over $10 million by the end of 2022. Next slide. And not only is our technology process really exciting, we have a very effective sales strategy to promote growth and scale. So our innovation is in how we manufacture the components. We do it faster, cheaper, with better performance. So essentially, we build these components as a roll of films, full production scale. And then we already work with established assemblers in the space where they will simply die cut for each customer spec. We have software that allows us to build your own battery on your website and then spit it out directly so an OEM can integrate. This is where we're using that to generate leads automatically. Next slide. And the main thing we've been successful, myself has I have over 10 to 20 years experience in semiconductor and print electronics, was the inventor of the world's first printed stretchable battery. And then my colleague, Carlos Munez, our CEO, is doing other novel research work on blood replicants as well. And the reason why we've been so effective and so efficient with our funds with only $1 million is because we're flipping the batteries startup model. Instead of raising significant funds and building up own facilities, we are incubated in a $15 million pilot facility. We have access to all this equipment so we can be nimble, but have the pilot scales to validate quality, supply chain, and pricing. And this is why customers are paying significant NRE for us to get these products in their hands. Next slide. So what we're here today is we have many customers right now that are asking for samples and requesting for quotes. We actually have a purchase order for this product of over 20,000 units. We're opening a bridge round to help us scale up to 1 million units per month at this average selling point, increase our marketing so we can bring in more customers in the pipeline, and bring in a senior VP of manufacturing to help scale up the process. Thank you. Any questions? You can go next slide. All my contact info, everything is there available.
Awesome. Let's go by the order. Samira, you first.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. How much does it cost you to create those batteries? And I'm also curious about the material you're using in those batteries.
Yeah, so I say this chemistry here, from what I remember the pricing, we're selling this at 50 cents, and our price is roughly less than 30.
And what kind of materials are you using?
So the chemistry that in this product we have here is what is called lithium CFX. This is proven to have the highest energy density for primary batteries, or 800 milliamp hour. It was previously plagued with high price and then poor power. We were able to optimize that with our process.
And I don't know if you're probably aware of the scarcity of the materials, right? And such as lithium as well. Yep. So is that something have you guys thought about it? And because we are running out of those minerals. I mean, there is a data we're done, right? So the only other way would be getting it out of the, smartphones or whatever is right out there. So have you guys thought about, Yeah,
it's a good question. We haven't really dived too much into it, but we are finding ways to make it in line with our company goals. For example, because the price of CFX is pretty high traditionally, it's used in drones and power tools. We've actually found a way to reduce the cost by 5 to 10x through an upcycling process where we take someone's waste material and then modify it into useful, and they pay us to take it. So that's one way is we're trying to, kind of fix that supply chain, but also reduce our costs at the same time.
Thank you.
Hi, Raj. I'm Mark Rosinski with General Dynamics Mission Systems. Do you have any environmental limitations as far as where the batteries can be deployed and operate? High temperature, low temperature, underwater, altitude, things like that?
So I'd say for the chemistry that I hold here, it doesn't have a solid state. It's just a liquid electrolyte. So yes, it would have limitations on those environments, but we just did get funded by Army SBIR to start hardening it for military use. We are incorporating a solid state electrolyte from a well-established company to make it extreme and tested for military use applications.
Very good, thank you.
Anna, you're up.
So can you talk a little bit about the performance compared to other lithium-ion performance? Because this is something that there's so many chemistry out there, right? Are you competing mainly from the form factor standpoint, that this is very thin. But what about the lifetime and things like it, the cycle performances and things like that?
Yeah, so I'd say like inherently we're focusing on the manufacturing process. So we're not looking to do any new traditional materials. We're just bringing them into our process and we manufacture faster and cheaper. That's the first initial. But we are finding with the process, we can improve battery performance. Like through our NSF SBR, we did a head-to-head comparison with this battery with our process versus traditional, and we found a 10% increase in performance on both the power and energy. And then also in rechargeable, we're seeing that for silicon anodes, those get really high energy, but you need a really high, what is like called a thick cathode in order to get the really high watt hour per liter. Our process can do double the thickness compared to traditional manufacturing. So we're seeing a lot of opportunity to improve battery performance as well right now.
Great presentation. I'm really interested about your tech. I'm actually meeting with my battery team tomorrow. I'm with Mitsubishi Chemical, so we do the electrolytes for the Panasonic batteries.
Right. Okay.
We do silicon anodes and cathodes, and we're looking at all sorts of different approaches. And this is interesting because we have just now looking at different processes. So my question on this is there any limitation on your process regarding materials? So anode, cathode, any type of special exotic materials that are being used now on some of the batteries, is there a limitation on what you can do there? And the second question is, are you going to scale up to larger battery form factors on your own? Because I know you're doing obviously wearable small battery systems, but are you looking at doing it for EV and other vehicles? In other words, increasing your capacity and building bigger battery systems.
Yeah, so I'll answer the first question. Yeah, right now we see there's like different polymers that can be used for e-beam curing process that we use. One are water-based, one are solvent. So basically you have a wide spectrum of selection materials that you can use depending on the materials you have. So we can make that adjustment, and we have a patent from Oak Ridge on that process. So we can, and what's really cool is we have software where you tell us all those specs and we can properly optimize the battery design. So that's one powerful tool we have, that combination of hardware and software. For the second question, yeah, our ultimate goal is to impact EVs and grid storage. What I see as a challenge is everyone wants to move EV, but we don't have the bandwidth manufacturing to hit that demand. It's just not physically possible with the current manufacturing. And yeah, we could build more factories like we're doing right now with silicon, with semiconductor manufacturing, but we need to innovate. And this is the technology to do it. But we find, many battery companies, they raise $200 million and they try to go for EVs and grid. And that's a really hard product to build. 10-year lifetimes, huge battery price. It's just a waste of material. And it's just eats R&D money. So we said, look, if we can validate the process and build something small, generate revenue, that revenue we're just going to throw that right back into R&D and build up, just expand the battery size into pack and just do more robust testing and scale up. So you can see the vision from doing small batteries, just making many of them for IoT and sensors, just sell them really quick, get them out of space. Then you do drone size, power tools. Maybe they don't have to last 10 years, but you could do 3, get some good revenue. And then you jump to EVs when you've got data. I mean, I talked to some battery companies here, like SL, they're just now having their 15-year testing on their EV batteries, and they're already promising warranty, and they're now getting the data. So we want to make sure we validate and scale the technology, be responsible with the money that we get from investors.
Just curious if you're looking at also any innovation around recycling of battery materials.
Yeah, we're interested. I mean, our goal right now is to be really focused on the manufacturing and validate that process. We are looking for ways to look at new chemistries to recycle. We have one of our investors, Heritage Group. It's a very large billion-dollar consortium. Their expertise is in recycling. So that partnership is going to allow us to take advantage of that.
Great. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you much, Raj. That's Dr. Rajan Kumar from Mateo Systems. Great pitch. And stay around and also check out the chat for a couple questions that you have to take a look at. I'm just going to share my screen really quickly so we can talk about who is going to be presenting for this session. So here, real quickly, sorry about that. Usually I'm better. So we have everybody who's here today from the first session. We had Mark, Bob, Christopher, Tina, and Samira. And we had Stravati, Aerospace, Ateo Systems, Black Sands, and Metricity. And moving on to our second session, as we say goodbye to some of our panelists, some of them are going to reappear in the third session as well. But we're joined by Delenn Shen from Cincinnati Insurance Companies, Ultratech Capital Partners, Tim Denning, VU Venture Partners, Deidre Williams, BMT, Roxanne Aragon. Mark is continuing with us from General Dynamics Mission Systems, from Space Capital, Alan Yu, from Seraphim Space, Jeff Cruzy, from Trish, James Hurry, and from AeroVironment, we have Derek Gores. We're going to be hearing from 5 companies in this session, including GroundCom.Space, Imagino Inc., Hudson Space Systems, Sereniasat, and Precursor SBC. So without further ado, I think because of time, we would like to get to know our panelists a little bit more, but maybe we'll do it at the end of the session if we have a few more moments. I think we're going to jump into the first presentation. So presenting will be Clive from Precursor. Clive Cook is the CEO and founder of Precursor SBC.
Thank you, Yuval. There we go. Good morning. I'm Clive Cook, co-founder and CEO of Precursor SBC. I quote from one of the conversations we had during our contract with US Space Force: space weather capability is 50 years behind where terrestrial weather capability is today. Precursor is a commercial company focused on providing actionable information in advance of important geospatial events. We provide real-time, high-fidelity space weather mapping. This is space weather nowcasting. This first-of-a-kind capability provides actionable information on how the changing space weather environment directly impacts space-based and terrestrial assets, operations, and plans. Next. Space weather is dynamic, uncontrollable, and extremely variable over the course of any given day. The space weather environment directly impacts the performance of the space asset operator, space warfighter, and critical ground-based infrastructure. Space weather impacts satellite launch, operation and repositioning, radar discrimination and tracking, communications, location-based capabilities, and space domain awareness. Next. The current space weather awareness solutions fall well short. The space weather environment analysis shown here is the actual daily space weather report that comes from NOAA SWIPC or the Second Weather Squadron of the US Air Force. It is a static report using an imperfect, non-representative depiction of the ionosphere due to over-reliance on models and outdated sensors. It provides generic information about global phenomena with almost no assessment of how the space weather environment will impact space assets, operations, or planning. Next. Precursor has developed a unique 4D time plus volume space weather technology, space weather nowcasting. Precursor space weather nowcasting is a unique, extremely high fidelity, real-time technology that measures the changing energy in the ionosphere using artificial intelligence to deliver a 1,000 times gain in both spatial and temporal resolution. It is not a model. It is what is actually happening in real time. This has never been done before. Next. This video here presents the real-time actual space weather conditions and data capture from various satellite-based systems. Just click once. Great, thank you. We create a real-time map of the ionosphere by measuring hundreds of different perspectives of the ionosphere from GNSS, LEO, ionoson, radio occultation, specialized sensors, and radar systems. You see each of these data gathering points and satellites as their orbits cross the sky. Space weather nowcasting captures the real-time evolution of the ionosphere and uses an innovative and state-of-the-art machine learning capability based on data fusion to deliver unmatched dynamic space domain awareness. Click again. Next slide. Thank you. The market for real-time space weather environment reporting and analysis and action is well over $10 billion annually amongst government, industry and financial services organizations. The market growth potential is significant from both private and public sector, given the requirement for space operators to be aware of the environment they operate within. Precursor has proven capabilities and commercial traction. We've demonstrated real-time, high-fidelity ionospheric mapping over Northern Europe for US Space Force. Precursor is working with the Navy to introduce our space weather capability and to launch a new satellite-based capability that will give even finer resolution of the ionosphere. Precursor engaged with the Air Force to introduce new missile defense capabilities and space weather analytics. And Precursor also is engaged in numerous other discussions to deliver new space domain awareness capabilities. We're partnering with a global reinsurance firm to deliver new insights, better analysis, better assess long and short-term risk, and to introduce new products and services for space operators. Next, please. Precursor is seeking a PEO for a space weather-based SBIR2 and is raising $4 million in a Series seed round to advance the company to the next milestones and begin commercial launch of our data subscription services. Precursor is presenting as well at the NASA iTech Showcase on December 9th or 8th in live in Raleigh, North Carolina. I invite you to join that. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much, Clive. Open up the floor for questions.
Hi, very good presentation. This is Sterling Shen from Cincinnati Insurance. I have a couple questions. First, can you share the resolution of the data you currently have? The second one is, do you keep an archive of the historical data for research purposes? If so, how far back does your data go to?
The resolution we can obtain using our real-time space weather nowcasting capability is a cube, a voxel length, width, and altitude of 3 kilometers on a side, as opposed to today, which is literally hundreds of kilometers a side on voxels. And our time resolution right now is in the order of single-digit minutes. We expect with the launch of our satellite with the Navy, that will go to sub-minute time resolution. We do not keep an archive of this data, though much of the data is available through classified government archives, and we can rebuild that using our capability as well.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, thank you. Hey, Clive, good to see you again. Question for you. Can you remind me of your business model? What does this cost?
Our business model is we sell our capability as a software as a service, or actually space weather as a service. In this particular case, to government, private organizations, and financial services organizations.
And I assume some sort of subscription. How much are you envisioning that costing somebody?
Right now, based upon the conversations we're having with different private or financial services organizations, it's on the order of $1 to $2 million annual subscription agreement per organization per year, renewable. And there are literally hundreds of those organizations that we can sell to. And for the government in particular, we are working through some interesting models that are more transactional. Some are more transactional and some are more license-based. Because ultimately this capability, they want to not only provide this capability to operators, but they want to deliver it as an autonomous capability in specific assets. So there's different business models based on that.
Go ahead, Cassandra.
Sorry, no, I'm not officially on this one, but I was just really curious to hear why I recall you being focused, Clive, on earthquake prediction. I was just curious if that's still part of the business or if there was a pivot.
It is still part of the business. The perturbations in the ionosphere that are caused by space weather, solar events, man-made events are also caused by earthquakes. So the space weather perturbations and ionospheric perturbations are a precursor to forecasting earthquakes, one of the precursors. So it's absolutely a requirement to do that and have that very high resolution insight into how the ionosphere is changing.
Awesome. Any last question for Clive before we move on? All right. Well, thank you very much. That was Clive Cook, CEO of Precursor SPC. Thanks, Clive, for joining us.
Thank you.
Next up is Imagino, and pitching will be their Chief Science Officer, Kevin Halverson. Kevin, you're on the line.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, perfect.
Very good. My name is Kevin Halverson. As mentioned, I'm the Chief Science Officer for Imagino Incorporated.
Sorry, 1 second. Just sorry, 1 second.
Oh, no
I just
problem.
want to make sure that your pitch is up like it should be. Had a little trouble showing it. And
No problem.
Started. You'll get your time back. Don't worry. Here we go. Okay, we're all set to go.
All right. Again, I'm with Imagino. Imagino is a venture-backed incubator funded by a family office. We're headquartered in Bellevue, Washington, and we have additional facilities at the University of Washington and in Boise, Idaho. We focus on ideas in aerospace, energy, healthcare, and water science. Today, I want to speak a bit on the changing needs of space. Next slide. The demand for space launch systems is increasing for both commercial and military applications. Aside from communications, satellites are needed for AI, data gathering, incident monitoring, and global security. In satellite launches alone, there's a predicted 4-fold increase from 2019 through 2028 when compared to the preceding 9 years. With space tourism and eventual commercial space travel added, the number of launches will continue to grow year over year. Next slide. In rocketry, the mass of the payload is limited by the mass of the vehicle and propellant. The payload makes up a small fraction of the launch mass. The remaining mass is the vehicle and its propellant. When generating lift by combustion, the largest single contributor to mass is the required oxidizer. Limitations on payload impact all uses of space as they burden the launch cost. Next slide. Our solution to these constraints is to develop an efficient propellant and propulsion system that uses no oxidizer, taking up a fraction of the volume and mass of what current propellants require. This solution can be integrated into existing rockets, retrofitting rather than reinventing. This allows an increase in payload mass that can be placed into orbit to meet the needs of an expanding industry. Next slide, please. Bihydrogen propellant is based on a novel use of hydrogen, which replaces both the fuel and oxidizer. The same basic components of the rocket remain relatively unchanged, yet the performance of the lift system can be increased by over 10-fold. Next slide, please. The generation of bihydrogen propellant begins with molecular hydrogen, known as H2, which consists of 2 hydrogen atoms bonded together. Bihydrogen works through the separation and sequestration of these 2 atoms, followed by a rebonding and energy release. Creating the bihydrogen propellant by separating the hydrogen molecule requires a considerable amount of energy to be added, as the 2 atoms are tightly bonded to one another. This amount of energy is recovered once the atoms are recombined. Next slide, please. The 2 atoms of molecular hydrogen exhibit different quantum spin states, effectively 2 separate species of hydrogen. Once separated, these unique spin state hydrogen atoms exhibit an opposing reaction when exposed to a magnetic gradient. Each is deflected in a different direction and can be sequestered and stored in separate vessels. The energy used to separate the molecule is then recovered by allowing the 2 species to recombine. Next slide, please. This recombination and release of the stored energy is used to generate thrust. Bihydrogen is 5.4 times more efficient than oxyhydrogen combustion. Some additional advantages are the elimination of a source of ignition and a simple method of throttling the thrust output. Next slide, please. Bihydrogen propellant and propulsion can increase the payload lift capabilities by a considerable factor. This increases the mass of the payload, reduces launch costs, and increases the number of payloads which the rocket can deliver. Using the Delta IV Heavy as an example, the fractional mass of the payload is 3.5% when using oxyhydrogen as a combustion propellant, compared to near 53% when using bihydrogen as an energy carrier, allowing 15 times more payload mass. Next slide, please. So where are we with this technology? We're currently at the validation stage. We're seeking grants and/or convertible notes, as well as strategic partners to gain access to an appropriate facility with a vacuum chamber and cryogenic systems. We're also seeking to hire additional personnel in the vein of a nuclear chemist, cryogenic engineer, and mechanical engineer, as well as outside contractors. We estimate 1.5 million in personnel, materials, and equipment costs. Additional facility costs are to be determined. Next slide, please. Thank you for your time. The team and I are available for questions.
Awesome. Thank you, Kevin. Open up the floor. Any questions for Kevin?
Yeah, I can ask one. What is the runway time that you guys are seeing from basically partnership to being able to start, producing?
Well, as I mentioned, we're really at the validation stage at this point. We're fairly early in this technology. We do have IP protection for it in place, but we're now, as I said, we're a venture-backed fund, and we're looking to expand, and particularly expand with strategic partners, ones that do have lift systems. We're primarily a B2B licensing model is our plan, though there is a potential that we could become a launch system at some stage. As for the time, the runway we're looking for right now is between 18 and 24 months.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for presenting. Just because of time limitation, we're going to move on to the next one. That was Kevin Halverson from Maginot Inc. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up is Sereniasat, and pitching will be Tom George, CEO and founder. Hi, Tom.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay, great. Thank you, Josh. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. My name is Tom George, owner and founder of Sereniasat. It's a small business that acquires and rapidly analyzes timely and actionable global remote sensing imagery using high-performance edge computing for multiple business verticals. Next slide, please. We are all familiar with the concept of finding a needle in a haystack, but try finding the particular needle you want within a stack of similar looking needles. So Sereniasat uses many different data sources from satellites, drones, aircraft, and ground-based IoT sensors. Sereniasat's technology is especially good at rapidly analyzing complex information for saving lives, fueling businesses, and for making sure that everyone has food on the table. Next slide, please. The first use case I'd like to show you is for defense and homeland security. And here is an example of Sereniasat's advanced artificial intelligence and machine learning algorithms successfully finding the single plane flying within a 100 square kilometer multispectral satellite image. If you can click that image, you'll see the plane. Yeah. For homeland security applications, this translates to finding, say, a terrorist within a crowd before that terrorist can cause any harm. And the consequences of making a mistake, I don't need to tell you, is that not only are innocent lives lost, but also a terrorist loss, which are both terrible outcomes. Next slide, please. When we were doing the dry run in preparation for this presentation, Asher Radensky took one look at this slide and told me he didn't know what was going on. And so, Asher, just for you, I want to say that this slide is all about why it takes data complexity to distinguish subtle differences in the spectral signatures of different crop types, such as wheat, corn, and rice. Next slide, please. This slide kind of gives you a glimpse of the various kinds of data services that exist currently. Although satellite data enjoys a nice $7.5 billion market, this is a market that has nothing but room to grow if one compares it against the giant cell phone and internet data markets, which have literally exploded in recent years. Sarniasat's ambition, therefore, is to grow the satellite data market to match the proven smartphone and internet data markets. Next slide, please. In terms of traction, Sarniasat has successfully generated significant revenue, both in the commercial and government sectors, and within the government, both from NASA, space, and the US Air Force. Next slide. We're not just a data company, we're also a hardware company with a partner developing the actual high-performance edge computing boards that are capable of running a wide variety of sophisticated commercial applications, such as, for instance, the L3Harris NV Geospatial Analysis product, on which Sarniasat has developed its deep learning algorithms. Next slide, please. And so what we do different is that we both acquire and rapidly analyze H-cube data, or high spatial and temporal resolution hyperspectral imagery. Now, this is a fancy term that means that we are acquiring more layers of information and processing it much more efficiently and at a better price point than our competitors. Our competition either analyzes data from third-party sources or acquires data, but we do both. Next slide, please. With regard to ASK, the United States Air Force runs a TAC-5 program that matches investor dollars 1-to-1 for a maximum of $1.7 million. And so I'm therefore requesting the full $1.7 million from the Air Force that will double your investment for a total of $3.4 million for the company. Now, these funds would allow us to do some early stage research into developing a plan for a unique H-cube data acquisition and analytics satellite constellation, unlocking the potential trillion-dollar satellite data market. Next slide, please. We have a well laid out roadmap of concrete milestones on our path to implementing our ultimate H-cube satellite data constellation. Next slide. And although as a company, we are currently very small, we have been very fortunate to establish strategic partnerships with multiple major organizations such as L3Harris, UNIVAC, USGS, multiple NASA centers, universities, and the Air Force Research Labs on both our commercial and government contracts on our path to ultimately achieving our vision for an H-cube satellite constellation. We invite you to join us on this exciting journey to create a revolution in satellite data acquisition and exploitation. Thank you very much for your time and attention, and I'm ready for questions.
Awesome. Any questions for Tom? Tim, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, I may have missed it, but where are you getting your data from? And is it your vision to put, for instance, like hyperspectral cameras on CubeSats in space? Where are you getting your data, and what's your vision for what those constellation satellites are going to look like?
So right now we have acquired data, hyperspectral data using an airborne platform. So we've done airborne data acquisition and analysis. There are also a number of government hyperspectral missions flying. There's an Italian mission called Prisma. There's the German DLR instrument that's flying on the International Space Station and so on. Although they are kind of limited in the spectral band that they look at, they're primarily in the visible and the near infrared. So what we'd like to do is expand that from the visible near infrared to include shortwave infrared and also long-wave infrared. These are traditionally the multispectral bands that are used by Landsat and have been proven to be applicable for multiple business verticals. So, but we instead of the 11 multispectral bands that Landsat acquires, we are proposing to acquire 402 bands.
Derek, you're up. Derek just joined us. Derek's from AeroVironment.
Yeah, thank you for your pitch. It's really interesting. Congrats on the traction that you have already. So how do you see your competitive advantage? Is it a combination of the hardware and your computer vision? Is your software hardware agnostic? Does it still function at the compelling level without the hardware? And then also, how are you training your algorithms? Are you using synthetic data? And do you feel like you have a competitive advantage in your software itself?
So yeah, so we have our primary focus is on the software, basically deep learning algorithms to be applied on edge computing platforms. And so right now, the latency involved in getting satellite data to businesses that can consume them is too large. I mean, Landsat data, for instance, it has a repeat frequency of about 17 days, and by the time the data is processed and disseminated, it could be as much as a few months, right? And so this makes it completely unattractive for multiple business verticals, precision agriculture being one of them, where you need daily farm management information at a price point that the farmer can afford. And so what we're proposing is to do high performance edge computing on the satellite platform itself in order to be able to deliver the actionable information in the form of prescriptions in this case within 24 hours of acquisition from the satellite platform. So the ultimate implementation calls for a 15 satellite constellation that could give you a daily global coverage at any point on the earth.
Okay, thank you. And then as far as strategy, just quickly, are you looking at the precision agriculture as a beachhead that you will then expand from there to other markets? Or are you trying to do defense and other applications simultaneously?
So the answer is kind of both. I mean, we do have a beachhead in agriculture based on our relationships with the large agricultural firms, Bayer Crop Science in this case. But in addition, we've had a considerable amount of success both on NASA and DoD contracts, specifically the Air Force, for high performance edge computing of big data, meaning hyperspectral data.
Thank you.
Okay.
Joseph, you're up for the last question. Just introduce yourself, please. We're not. I don't think we're getting you. Nope.
Yeah, hey, my fault. Name's Joe Freyer. I'm not sitting on this panel. I just wanted to say, so I'm an Air Force employee, and I saw you're looking for TAC-5, Strat-5 funding. I was wondering if you had already reached out to AFWorks.
Yes. In fact, we are a AFWorks pitch day winner on 2 proposals. So
wonderful.
So we have a very good relationship with AFWorks, and this is what enables us or makes us eligible for TAC-5.
Okay.
But now the issue is to find the matching funds from an investor or a government program, and either one would work.
I see. Okay, I misunderstood your request. All right. Hey, thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah.
No problem.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This was Tom George from Sereniasat. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
Next up is Hudson Space Systems. Nathan Tabaz is going to be presenting. He's the CEO and co-founder. Nathan, you with us?
Hi guys, can you see and hear me?
Both. Great.
Fantastic. Shall we jump into it? All right, next slide, please. Hi guys, thank you so much for the opportunity to present at this wonderful panel. Hudson Space Systems is building a full stack solution to make manufacturing in microgravity and researching in microgravity simple. Next slide, please. Before I jump into things, I just want to quickly introduce our team. I'm Nathan, I'm our CEO. We're joined in the chat by Dakota, our CFO, and we have 3 wonderful other co-founders who couldn't be with us today. Cole is employee number 1, and we're backed up by a fantastic advisory board with over 50 years of research in space, tech, and legal. Next slide, please. So the microgravity environment has massive potential to catalyze innovation. It can unlock novel mechanisms of research, which can be extrapolated to manufacturing. It can accelerate existing terrestrial research, and it serves as an excellent analog for human spaceflight on a small scale. Next slide, please. So major corporations have seen this value and they've been researching in the microgravity environment for decades, but in a limited capacity. Next slide, please. So every sector of STEM can stand to benefit from those novel mechanisms that can be discovered, acceleration of their research in the microgravity environment. So there's a huge potential market of people who can benefit from accessing space. Next slide, please. But there's a problem. There are barriers. It's really hard to do research, to manufacture in space. It takes 1.5 years on average to launch a payload. It costs $15,000 per kilogram on average. You have to engage with multiple companies, multiple providers. We've talked to customers who are drowning in paperwork for NASA contracts, and existing resources are over-constrained. They can't support the future of manufacturing. Next slide, please. So our solution is microgravity as a service. We are vertically integrating all of these pain points to make it as easy as booking a flight online for our customers. Low cost, simple, and with the possibility of rapidly iterating, because good science requires iteration. Next slide, please. The space right now is very nascent, and because we're building a vertically integrated solution, each of those stacks in the vertical positions us to compete with a different type of company. We compete with launch services in a little bit. We compete with payload manufacturers. We compete with research and manufacturing companies, but only Hudson Space Systems offers that full end-to-end service. Next slide, please. That end-to-end service is wrapped up in a user experience that allows our customers to access their data, book launches, configure their payloads. We have reusable launch systems that are low cost and allow us to control when we're launching and to keep the costs low. We have better hosted payloads that make it simple for our customers, and custom integration services that make it easy for us to integrate our customers' experiments. Next slide, please. The core of our offering is launch vehicles, even though we're not a launch services provider. We've developed patent pending launch vehicles that are low cost and reusable, allowing us to hit all of the metrics we want and offer the optimal service to our customers. Next slide, please. So we're developing 3 service offerings to grow with the projected market and to grow with our customers, starting with a small launch vehicle that we have prototyped and tested already that offers 3 minutes of research opportunity for our customers. Our second generation vehicle offers 10 minutes of microgravity exposure, and it also serves as the first stage for our ultimate goal, a reusable, recoverable, returnable factory in very low Earth orbit to support the future of our customers' manufacturing in space. Next slide, please. We're planning on ramping up our launch cadence to support the projected market demand, ultimately planning on launching our launch vehicles multiple times a week. Next slide, please. 1.5 years from now, we'll be launching our first Pathfinder missions, and 5 years from now, we'll be starting to launch our orbital factories. Next slide, please. We've booked out our first launch completely, and we're well on the way to booking out our second launch. The letters of support and the letters of intent from customers keep on rolling in. We've been interviewing potential customers for about 2 years now. We have excellent tech validation with our first generation prototype complete and being tested. We've had successful engine igniter tests in the works over the summer, and we've been partnering with industry leaders to make this happen. Next slide, please. We just closed a successful fundraise in June, raising a little bit more than $400,000, and we're about to raise our seed round of $3.5 million. Next slide, please. We hope you guys will join us for the future of research and manufacturing in space. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Nathan. Any questions for Nathan? Go for it, James.
All right. Hello, and thank you for the presentation. It's fascinating to see that you're interested in research. We actually are doing research on several flights, including the Inspiration 4 flight, and on 3 upcoming flights as well with different carriers. It looks like you're not working with other carriers. It looks like you're building your own vehicle for an automated research opportunity in short duration in flight, right? So this doesn't involve any humans. It doesn't involve docking with the International Space Station or any other aspect except for what would be an automated experiment and then return. Would that be correct?
Yeah, exactly. Our first 2 offerings are suborbital launches for smaller payloads, and our ultimate offering is a orbital flyer that's completely free flying.
Do you have any plans for anything with a longer duration in flight?
So the orbital flyer can stay in orbit for as long as the customer needs. It could stay in orbit for years if need be.
And do you have any plans for lunar activities?
No, not presently. We're focused on accelerating the pace of research and manufacturing in space. So anywhere there's microgravity works for us.
James, can you just give a quick 20-second introduction to the organization you represent?
Sure. We're called the Translational Research Institute for Space Health, which is, fitting for the discussion. We've funded research on a number of commercial flights, and we source for NASA's deep space exploration. So we provide federal funding and grants for lunar missions, for Mars missions, and then also for commercial activities as well on orbital flights.
Thank you. Thank you, James. Tim and then Alan.
Yeah, just very quickly, two questions. First being the market for this. I'm not very familiar with it. I'm sure James knows much more about it, but can you tell me a little bit about what the market actually looks like? And then how much capital are you going to need to run this at scale? I see you're raising 3.5, but what are your future capital plans?
Okay, so the market is actually really fascinating. It exists, but we want to expand it. And it really is anyone doing STEM research. It's small academic researchers at universities, it's giant pharmaceutical corporations, it's material science companies. Anyone who is doing advanced research can benefit from microgravity. So we're talking to biology researchers. We've spoken to people at large companies who wish to remain unnamed, who are industry leaders in pharmaceuticals and household chemicals. It runs the gamut. And yeah, anything space related is capital intensive. Our goal is to augment our external capital needs by making money as soon as possible. So as soon as we start launching vehicles, we'll be generating revenue, and that will supplement the fundraisers that we need to do. We project that about 3 years after we raise the seed round, about 1.5 years after we raise the seed round, we'll need to source a Series A somewhere in the neighborhood of $20 million. And then it's wholesomely dependent on our traction, our market traction afterwards. If we're able to hit our deadline and launch our orbital offering, we can start to make money so that ideally we become cash positive. But conversely, there's a real possibility that we'll need to raise a Series B, and that would be in the neighborhood of 50 to 100 million.
Awesome. Alan, you're up. Last question.
Thanks, Nathan, for the presentation. So a quick question is just want to get your thought on, is there any part of that, including the space return vehicle, are you not trying to build in-house, or you're trying to build everything in-house? Because there's a lot of players here, right? There's launches not even to penetrate, there's already established players. And there's Varda, Inversion, all these are doing space returns. And manufacturing platform, I'm sure there's one too. So all these people, they're kind of, all working specific on that platform. So where do you think your a competitive advantage in the short and medium term is compared to, especially given the timing too, right? Redwire, all these. So how do you think about the competition, and then how do you focus on your strategy?
That's a really excellent question, and it strikes at the core of our business model. Our competitive advantage, in addition to the multiple innovations in the tech itself that we've made along the way, is this full stack approach. There are many companies that are offering launch vehicles, that are offering free flyers, that are doing experimental implementation, but each of those components has cost and has timeline. So by doing it ourselves, it's a little bit more capital intensive. Well, it's more capital intensive upfront, but we have the intellectual resources to do it. And the end result is an unparalleled reduce in cost for customers. It's a simplified experience, which is essential if you want to expand the market as rapidly and as large as we do, and it's a reduction in control of the timeline. Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Essentially, no one is offering an end-to-end service, and you could put one together, and people do put an analog together, but it's not ideal.
But I guess just to extend that just a little bit, do you think you can get the timing right in terms of you can go to market with a working product soon enough within like 2 rounds of capital?
Yeah, we can go to market with our first product in a year and a half. Well, our first service in a year and a half, because that is our distinction. We're providing a service, not selling a product. But we developed a prototype a couple of years ago as university students. That's really how our company was kickstarted. So we've been iterating on this first generation launch vehicle. We've been testing our engine. As soon as we have the injection of seed funding that we're raising, we have a very rapid and tangible path to launching. And we've been engaging with customers already to book out those launches.
Thanks, Nathan.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Nathan. That was Nathan Tabaz from Hudson Space Systems, CEO and co-founder. Thanks, Nathan.
Thank you, guys.
Next up is the final company for our space session. Pitching is Jakub Lajman. He's the CEO of GroundCom Space. You with us?
Yeah, hello everyone. I'm here.
Hi, Jakub. Hear you great.
I'm sorry?
Loud and clear. Go ahead.
Yeah, cool, perfect. So thank you very much. I'm Jakub Lajman, and I'm one of the co-founders of GroundCom. And next slide, please. So as we know, this is the CubeSat. These days it's like a very powerful satellite, which is which can be developed and launched in a fraction of the cost of the conventional satellites in like 20 years ago. But these satellites generate a huge amount of data which needs to be transferred. Next slide, please. To download this data and control the satellites, we use these ground stations, which are antennas like these. We don't need anymore these like big buildings like to operate satellites on lower orbit. Next slide, please. So let's say when this like a customer, which can be like a telco company, Earth observation company, or some research institute, they launch their satellite. They're usually right now buying the ground station. Usually, our team were before developing the ground stations for the teams like this in Central Europe, and then we come up with this. We identified this problem. Next slide, please. That when the company like this buys their own ground station, they can use it only for about 1 hour a day for a typical lower orbit, polar lower orbit. And these customers, this means that they have very limited time to communicate and limited amount of the data they can download. Next slide, please. So our customers, which we were before developing the ground stations for, they shared the one ideal goal. It would be like to have the network of the ground stations, which actually is not as expensive as like a big players they are. And they can use it remotely without investing, because building such a ground station network is not only very expensive from perspective of hardware, but there is a lot of paperwork which cannot be like fast enough with just like more money or like more people on board. Next slide, please. So this is the reason why we created the GroundCom, which is a shared ground station network which is accessible online. And right now we are launching our first 3 locations. Next slide, please. And with our pilot customers, we identify like 3 revenue sources. Very usually subscription, which is usually for technology demonstration or not very data heavy missions. They pay the subscription per year of the operations, and they have a dedicated amount of the time of the connectivity time. For the missions which need more data, they can or ad hoc, like they can have a pay per minute model. But mostly with our customers, which are mostly the constellations, we have very individual conditions, but still taking advantage of the cost, and which are our one competitive advantage. Next slide, please. So right now we are finishing our first three ground station locations, and we have the private investment for it. Like I would say, it was like pre-seed. We also are incubating in the European Space Agency incubation program, and our first customers have the launch windows at the start of the next year. So it will be our pilot operations, and we already have the pipeline for another 4 customers launching in the first half of next year. And one important point would be already identified, and we extended our services licensing service, because we find out that not only the technology is the issue, and building the ground station investment, but the licensing process can sometimes take even longer than development of the whole mission. Next slide, please. So all of this cannot be, of course, like not done with the great team. I have two other co-founders with the experience from the European Space Agency, one in the area of RF engineering, and one the experience with the software for space missions and mission control. And fourth co-founder, Tomáš, is experienced in building the business development teams around the world for high-tech companies. Of course, we have strong partners, mostly the universities, for doing the research, because even if our first ground stations are built from the commercial components, which we can buy, we already have our own improved models, like for high power amplifiers or feed and so on. Regarding the software, we cooperate with the company HALT, which is the European company, and with the focus on the security, because it's another like a big new topic. Next slide, please. Why we think it's a right timing for us is because small sat market is really booming, because the small sats and CubeSats are very, very affordable these days. And from the reports we have, in the next 9 years, 2030, there are planning like 10,000 new small sat to be launched. And only this year we have the report that, excluding the mega constellation from Starlink, there were like 350 satellites launched only this year, which are our primary customer segment. Next slide, please. Regarding the competition, we were also inspired with this, we call it like big players, like Amazon Ground Services or Kongsberg Satellite Services, but we have validated and we have confirmed from our customers that these services are like too expensive for the CubeSat missions with the CubeSat budgets, I would call it. Then we also have the free service SatNOX, which is used mostly for satellites which use the radio amateur band, but we also have the first customers which actually were rejected to use the radio amateur band because it was cutting their bandwidth. So our most direct competitor is LeapSpace. It's a European company. At first they started only in Europe. We started from the very first days to launch the locations around the globe to have the distribution and minimize the off time. So this is actually our competitive landscape. Next slide, please.
30-second warning.
So right now, after the pilot operations planned for start of next year, we plan to work on a seed round to ask for 3.5 million euros to actually scale our ground station network and boost our sales activities. And for 35% of this ask is used for the development, actually improve our technology and keep ahead with the low cost but very powerful technology what we have right now. Next slide, and it's so it's a summary, and thank you very much for this opportunity.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the pitch. Let's start with the questions. Alan, is your hand raised up from the previous session? Do you have a question here as well?
No, sorry, I just forgot about it.
Go ahead, Tim. It's okay.
Yeah, what's your ideal customer look like? And are there enough of those ideal customers out there to support 1,000 satellites or small sats?
Yeah, actually, our original business plan, which we closed the previous investment, was to operate 250 satellites in 5 years. But then during the acceleration program we have now in San Francisco, we started to focus on the constellation customers and mostly the Earth observation customers. So right now we have in a pipeline a customer who is ready to sign the exclusivity for his bigger tens of the missions. So these are our very typical customers, and our next step is actually to identify and make sure that customers like this, which actually one contract can be in millions of dollars annual revenue per one customer, is so that it's not only the one. Yeah, that we would be super lucky, and if we make sure that there are other customers like this, what actually we already have some list they are, and then we will be ready for this next round. So this is the prerequisite for us that we will validate also this. Maybe I would add one other thing, that we also have the feedback, which was very important for us, as even it is not our customer from the planet. because we identified that what they decided to build their own ground station like 10 years ago, they really validated all our assumptions that the cost was the very important factor, because there were existing services for these like high budget missions. And these days they would really would like to use the service like we are. So actually we are still in contact. So maybe there will be some cooperation later. But actually they validated all our assumptions on our segment we are targeting right now.
Go ahead, Dylan, your question.
Yeah. So I guess I'm not very familiar with the technology. Comparing, you have a very nice slide of comparing you with competitors. Can you share a little bit about your technology? What's the advantage you have that allows you to operate at much lower cost than like AWS or those big ones, right? They are like 10 times more expensive providing same services.
Yeah. Yeah, it was actually quite tricky when we were starting, because usually like we just were building the ground station from the off-the-shelf components. And the primary advantage before, when we were able to put the cost really down, was that there is a high added value only when you know how to put it together and make it working. So it was the one point. And another point is that even if we started with first ground station with the commercial components, we identified kind of the quick wins. Yeah, will be like how we can improve the technology, meaning the electronics, the SDRs, to like still being able to scale it up to S-band and X-band, so like a higher and higher frequencies, still keeping this low cost. So for example, our cost internally to develop and build one ground stations is about 30 to 40K, and the same product is a sell for 150. So
do you have any? So go ahead.
So this is already what we have as a part of our IP, what we are trying to improve and work on, which is also part of the ask.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask. Do you have any patents regarding those technologies? Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, one last question. Samira, do you want to ask a question?
Hi, sorry, yes. I think I put it on the chat as well. I'm curious about your forecast. What are you forecasting right now for next year? And just give us some kind of idea of what are you expecting your revenue for the next 2 years? What is your acquisition plan?
Yeah, in next 2 years, actually we are focused, we would like to, after the finish of the validation, to extend our network from 3 locations to 10, 15, and to build very scalable business development process. So right now, as we are focused on these constellations, we expect to have to operate 300 satellites in next 2 years, and we already have the pipeline for all of this, even more, so with the probability that we can reach it. But
and I guess is US and Europe the pipeline, or is it US only?
It's mostly US. It's mostly US. Yeah, mostly US, but also some European ones.
Got it.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you, Jakub Lagerman from groundcom.space. That is our last pitch for the space session. So thank you so much. Thank you to everybody who pitched. Quickly, we'll do a quick recap of who we saw, then we're gonna move on to our next session. I think I lost sharing privileges over here. Here we go.
Thank you very much.
We heard from groundcom.space, Imagino Inc., Hudson Space Systems, Sereniasat Incorporated, and Precursor SPC. And we were joined by an awesome panel, Dylan Shen from Cincinnati Insurance Companies, Tim Denning from Ultratech Capital Partners, from VU Venture Partners, Deidre Williams, from BMT, Roxanne Aragon, Mark Krasinski from General Dynamics Mission Systems, from Space Capital, Alan Yu, from Serafim Capital Space, Jeff Cruzy, from Trish, James Hurry, and from AeroVironment, Derek Gores. So thank you, everybody who joined, and for the panelists that are continuing. Next up is our AI session. So we're going to be joined by Dr. Andrea Ruotala from Liberty. Mark Krasinski is continuing on with us from General Dynamics Mission Systems. From Worldwide Tech Services, Cindy Mallory. From Now Vertical Group Incorporated, Dave Whitmire. From Upheaval Investments, back from our first panel, is Cassandra Carruthers. From Diamond Edge Ventures, also was with us earlier, Bob Christopher. From Army Futures Command, Destry Grogan. From the United States Air Force, Joseph Fryer. From Thales Cloud Security, Solomon Cates. From AirVironment, Derek Gores, also with us in the first session. And from Ditra, it's Christopher Brazier. All right, so let's get started. We're going to be hearing from 4 companies in this session: Streamit, Vendita, Nine, and Flash Scientific Technology. So let's cue up the first slide. We're going to be hearing from Flash first, and Jason Dees, who is the founder, is going to be presenting.
Okay, can you guys hear me okay?
Perfect.
All right, very good. We'll get started here. Good afternoon. My name is Jason Dees, founder and CEO of Flash, where we save lives and economies through weather analytics. Now, that's the really boring tagline. The really cool one is we predict lightning with AI and machine learning. Next, please. Next slide. And even that is not totally true. Lightning is just our cornerstone product. We now have an entire AI suite of generated products to go along with the lightning, such as wind, hail, hurricanes, tornadoes. I'm going to blow your minds here in a second with a tornado AI product that we have, precipitation, onset and ending of rain and snow, and winter storms. So pretty much anything you can think of that we can pour into our AI model, we can produce an accurate forecast for. So welcome to the future, where Flash uses a software-only solution, taking the algorithmic insights, AI, machine learning, combining this with the vast data lakes we now have available to solve the previously thought unsolvable. Next, please. So we started with lightning prediction because it has yet to be solved, as all current lightning data providers show observed strikes or strikes that have already occurred. And so by definition, these hardware-based networks miss that first strike 100% of the time. Why is that important? Well, it's important because 40% of all injuries and deaths come from that first strike. Next, please. We also started with lightning prediction because lightning is a big problem getting bigger. 22,000 wildfires started per year due to lightning. Think about $1.8 billion in losses out in California and Arizona this past year due to wildfires. 240,000 individuals struck per year, $5 billion in insurance losses, and then $1 to $2 billion losses per year due to aviation. This is going to be a huge sector for us. Not only do we predict the first strike, but we predict the last strike. And so the stat I want to leave you with today is a Boeing jet burns a gallon of fuel per second circling a runway. So we've done pricing studies with Southwest Airlines. If we can get those planes down just 5 minutes faster in the air, 5 minutes faster safely, which we feel we can do, then we save them hundreds of millions of dollars a year in fuel costs alone per airline. So aviation is going to be huge for us. Take all of these numbers and keep in mind that lightning frequency will increase by 50% through 2100 due to climate change. Next, please. So what do we provide? We provide the start of lightning, prediction lead time of 15 to 25 minutes, no hardware needed, an unlimited monitoring radius, and a prediction accuracy up to 99.6%. It is a patented algorithm issued in just 6 months. And we focus on the first strike before any storm develops. But wait, there's more. Next, please. As mentioned, we also predict the end of lightning. So the same algorithm used to predict the first strike is used to predict the last strike. 30 minutes after the last rumble of thunder is the current practice. We feel we can safely cut that time in half. Next, please. So what kind of traction have we had with the lightning prediction product? Well, we did the Miami condo collapse. We provided a lightning forecast to the rescue crews for a 5-day period after the collapse. And then more recently, Daytona, at the race there, we provided lightning support for the public, for the safety of race attendees, and also provided DGM race team with accurate forecasts for onset of precipitation. But we also had high-level talks already with Spirit, NetJets, some golf entities. One of these we are signing a pilot project with, which I can't announce just yet, here in March, that we're excited about. Next, please. So you guys all know about AI, so I'm not going to bore you with that, but in terms of meteorology and forecasting, we used to do everything with physics and formulas. Now we're going to use the past to predict the future. So the days of flipping a coin for weather forecast are over. Being right 50% of the time is no longer acceptable. Next, please. So what does AI offer for us? Here's that tornado forecast tool I was promising to show you. This is just one of many examples of what AI could do. we input 30 years of historical data into a machine learning model for extended tornado warning forecast. The image on the left shows a 3-hour forecast of tornadoes with the highest probabilities in orange and red. The image on the right shows the actual tornadoes for that day in the red dots. The red line is just for reference to show how accurate the 3-hour forecast was. So imagine hospitals, schools, construction sites, etc., having a 3-hour forecast of high tornado probabilities. AI is indeed changing what is capable in the forecast world. Next, please. So this is just a loop of the product in the top image there. This is a line of thunderstorms that moved through Wisconsin back in the fall and also Illinois. And as we zoom in, you can see the lightning predictions coming in. They're clustered at first, but then as we zoom in further, you can see more and more of the lightning predictions, literally thousands of strikes. It's running in under 400 milliseconds, not only showing where the lightning currently is, but also showing where it's going. So this is a predictive tool that no one else has. So very powerful and has a lot of insights into weather intelligence. Seamless API across the entire United States, lends itself to enterprise and consumer as well. And we built the architecture so that we can build in other weather parameters as well. Next, please. So far we've raised over $1 million in 6 weeks in the crowd. We started out on Start Engine. Raising that amount of money in 6 weeks was top 10 all time on Start Engine. So we do relate well to the crowd. We're currently in a Reg D, doing very well in it, having raised 500,000 up to 2 million. We're at 30 cents a share in this round. Our 6-month plan on the right there, which includes finishing out this Reg D, but also we're already targeting initial sales within this first 6 months, and then the enterprise solutions, looking at those down the road in this 6 months. So with that, I will take any of your questions.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Saul, you're up first with first question.
Thanks. Yeah, quick question on sort of the targets, market that you might see, not just today, but in the future. Is smart cities or any of those initiatives out there a potential target to help those communities find and combat their weather problems?
Yeah, absolutely. The more we talk with these companies, the more we find out how we might be useful to them. So something such as electric grid and the smart grid, they actually reroute power during thunderstorms. So because a line that is struck doesn't get as much damage when it doesn't have electricity flowing through it. And so if we can give them a smart way to have that electricity flow through it, then we're doing something. But even down to something as smart as little as Amazon Alexa or Google Home, letting you know that your electronics might be susceptible or something like that. But yeah, we've been in talks from the small scale to the large scale, the smart city type things.
Thanks.
Great. Dr. Ruotolo, followed by Avi.
Thank you. I lead innovation across 44 utilities, mostly in the US. And I saw that you're working with Georgia
Power, yes.
Power. Yeah. So what's the commercial engagement that you have with them? I just want to get my head around it because I would love to test your technology.
Right. So as mentioned before, it's a lot of these that we've spoken to, including Georgia Power, it's about how they route electricity. And so they will actually reroute the electricity based on if a thunderstorm's coming or not. But they don't have any predictive capabilities right now. And so if they can reroute in a smarter way with this predictive technology, then that saves them money. And then also, like I said, a line that gets struck by lightning that doesn't have a charge through it sustains less damage than one that has actual electricity running through it at the time.
Right. And so on the commercial model, are you charging them right now a flat fee?
Again, maybe I misspoke, but these are just still in the talks right now. We're not actually engaged with any of those at the moment. So
okay, thank you, Jason.
You're welcome.
Hi, this is Avi Lindenbaum. Appreciate the presentation. Can you speak a little bit more about your sustainable competitive advantage and your differentiation on the technology side?
Right. Right now, from a competitive advantage point, there is no other lightning prediction company out there. So everybody relies on detection, meaning that they see the thunderstorms or have sensor-based technology that actually sees it. Our competitive advantage is First of all, that we have a predictive component and we can say when the first storm is going to develop. So we're actually creating new markets that didn't exist. So if you think about wildfires, if you tell a firefighter, hey, lightning's already occurred out there, that doesn't really help them. If you can tell them lightning is going to occur at this spot in 20 minutes and it lines up with a hot spot where lightning or where fires are conducive, then you're creating a new market. And so that's really our competitive advantage as far as that goes. And then the fact that we require no hardware, we're purely cloud-based, and AI really gives us an advantage over the competitors as well.
Okay, Cindy with the last question.
Hi, going back to your AI models, is there a human in the loop, or can you speak to that a little bit?
Right, no, not in our AI model. We're taking data that's already out there. So it used to be, I would have never gone after this venture with previously because the data just wasn't there. But then there was agreement set up with Google and Amazon for them to house the data, house the big data. And so that big data being with Google and Amazon enables us to just go out and use our algorithms and models and grab that data without any human intervention in that AI model.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jason, for pitching. By the way, side note, just we have a company that was pitching in the space session that does space weather, but also does earthquake prediction at a high clip of up to 14 days ahead of time. If you guys combined, you would create quite the service.
We already thought we did lightning in a bottle, but it sounds like we can combine with them. That'll be good.
every insurance company would be knocking on those.
Exactly.
Wonderful.
Thank
Okay, so thank you, Jason. Next up is Dave Rocca is CEO and founder of 9High. Dave, are you on the line?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me okay?
Perfect.
Perfect. Okay, great. Hi, everyone. I'm Dave Morosca. I'm President CEO of AI Strategy. I'd like to thank Josh and the folks at Deep Tech for the opportunity to meet with all of you today. And I'm presenting 9High. It's a novel AI-enabled platform for driving the success of new technologies. It's really a decision guidance platform. Next slide. So what is the DoD need? So some of you may be familiar with this issue and some may not, but the DoD invests obviously billions of dollars into R&D and new technologies every year. And yet about 90% of these innovations actually fail, while the need for innovation only gets higher. So what we're looking to do is actually get a lot of these technologies through the valley of death, which a lot of people hear about from both the investing side and development side of technologies. Next slide. And really, it's not any easier for investors and enterprises either. Industry struggles with this as well. Organizations that evaluate and try to integrate new technologies often struggle with the same issues that folks do on the DoD side. They need to assess new technology that really could have huge business implications, not only for the present product mix, but really for decisions that of products and technologies that could have an impact on their business really for the next 10 years. You know, there could be literally thousands of people involved in different types of investments, and the right decision, you know, can really lead to either success or demise. So a lot of examples all throughout various types of industries: automotive, drones, energy, defense and aerospace, you name it. Everybody faces a similar problem. Next slide. So what are the reasons for these failures? It's a lack of actionable intelligence and prior outcome experience that leads to poor decision making, right? So what happens is people make, you know, investments into the wrong innovation. There's limited knowledge that they can share across their organization. They might fail to identify what those red flags are when they're going through and trying to assess either when they're, you know, investing into a technology or when they're developing that technology. You know, so it's really making great choices that are not subjective. You know, we want to bring in objectivity and we want to bring in quantitative measurements into really all the decisions that go into investment and development of new technologies. Next slide. So what is 9High all about? Really, it leverages well over 15 years of experience that we have in turning subjective information into objective guidance, and then qualitative opinions into quantitative decisions. You've probably all been sitting around, you know, boardrooms and tables and laboratories where everybody's got a different opinion, and you know which one usually wins the day. It's probably typically the loudest voice or the person with the most experience but it's not necessarily based on any great quantitative decision metrics. So what we're doing is we're using very specific and repeatable metrics, these 9 FPMs that I'll talk about later, both to actually select the technology, and then we use those same metrics when we go actually through development, and we bring technologies through multiple TRLs all the way up to deployment. And even once we deploy, we're still using very similar metrics to actually monitor life cycles of products. Next slide. So here's an example of just very quickly. So there's 9 fundamental prime metrics that we use that are always standardized for any technology. We have, and these are arranged in power set configuration I'll talk about in the next slide. But realistically, you can look at this slide and very quickly see where the issues are with a particular either investment or development program that you might have, and which areas are doing well. So green obviously has risks that are being addressed as you're going through development, but the red areas are areas where folks really need to focus on and try and get some better solutions or better ways of providing evidence that can reduce risk throughout the development process. Next. So how does this really work? This is really the key. This is the fundamental way that our system in NiHi works. And it's the way I've run 3 businesses before. I ran the largest test laboratory in the country, the largest private one for the DoD at Dayton T. Brown here in Long Island. And just whenever I've been working through business scenarios or helping folks with technology development efforts, I always come back to these fundamentals. And really what it is, it's a progression of 2 different tiers of power sets that we look at in order to look at all those essential measurements that we need to make decisions while we're going through a development process. Next slide. And how does this work? Well, what we're using is higher order logic. Using what we're doing is building out 5 different AI agents that really look at this from a quantitative aspect, while people are looking at it from the human perspective. So we see these 9 words and these 9 measurements that we want to improve. Meanwhile, AI is working behind the scenes to make recommendations and look at various options for you based on prior development activities that fall into the 3 categories of either the technology, the team that's working on the technology, or the application. So this power set lets machines do what they do best and lets humans do what they do best. Next. As far as traction, where are we right now? Very happy to thank the U.S. Air Force for starting us off within the AFWERX program. We won a phase 1 and a phase 2. I was sponsored by the Office of the Undersecretary of Defense in doing that. And AFWERX is great because they do allow, folks, as long as there's an aircraft, an Air Force component, they allow award, to sort of non-pure Air Force programs. So this is a joint program. This is the Joint Munition Technology Program that started us off with phase 2. And the fellow that supported us was actually very successful within there. And I'm happy to say that we were part of that. And since has moved over to Defense Production Act Title III. He's now the director of Title III and has just awarded us a contract to start off this $9.3 million in funding. So we're actually successfully gotten through that valley of death that we talked about in the first slide and got funding for phase 3, which is very good. The nice thing about working with Defense Production Act Title III is their existence, their sole existence is to support the U.S. industrial base and to drive innovation. So while we're developing out a platform that will work for whatever effort DPA Title III wants to develop, we'll also be working with all their partner industrial manufacturers to get that commercial traction. So it's nice that we have a platform that kind of bridges both sides, both government and industry. Next. Just as proof of some of that, I can't say which 2, but there's two folks in the top IT government contractors that we're already working with. One we're under contract with, and the other one has offered to help us in basically anything that we need in order to deploy to DPA Title III. So pretty good examples right here. We've got 2 of these folks on board already. And next slide. So the ask, what we're looking for is very specifically right up front. If there's anybody in the audience or if there's any folks that know of Air Force stakeholders that would be interested in working with us to do some pilot work and build this into your program offices, since we are getting non-Air Force funding from the Secretary of Defense, we qualify for external funds, and we can get up to $4.6 million from the Strat 5 program. Likewise, for commercial companies, very interested in doing pilot programs with large companies that have diverse technology needs. And then for investors, real quick, we're planning on doing an A or B round next year, Q3 to Q4. Next slide. That's it. This is really just our development team on 12 and 13, and happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Dave. Open up the floor for questions for Dave from Lanheim. Go ahead, Dr. Rutal.
Oh, sorry, I was on mute there. Why, this is very interesting. I actually have plenty of questions, but I'm going to go just with one today.
Sure.
So you have chosen your beachhead market to be Air Force, is that right?
Well, they chose us. I mean, they provided the initial funding. Up until then, we didn't have any seed funding to go forward. So yeah, they were willing, and we, like I said, I already had a relationship with the Joint Enhanced Munition Technology Program. So is that relationship where they said, yes, we were talking about this as a concept. They said they're interested, so we decided to go forward with them.
Right. I saw US manufacturing as well. Is that where you're planning to move next?
So what we're doing is we're rolling out. I mean, this 9.3 it's a large amount of money to have as a phase 3 from one group for development funding. And what it is to roll out and actually deploy at Defense Production Act within the Secretary of Defense's office. So that will be the first actual deployment of the software. And then from that, yeah, so absolutely, we're going to be at several different manufacturing events that DPA supports. So one is in Denver this December, and probably by next December, we'll be rolling out at that conference also. But yeah, so we definitely have a direct transition to industrial customers.
Industrial, excellent. So you mentioned about 2 tracks, right? What humans do best, what machines do best. What I would love to see next in your next iteration is how you're going to integrate the two. Because this phrase, culture is a strategy for breakfast, I have a lot of experience with that. So I'm wondering, how are you planning to integrate the 2 sides, the machine side with the human side?
Well, see, that's inherent in what we're doing. So in other words, we're looking at the 9 fundamental measurements, correct, for successful technology deployment. So by doing that, first of all, what we do is we start off with, it's really a matchmaking service of subject matter experts. It's basically finding folks who have needs for technology development and matching them up with expertise. And as they're working as a team to assist the development team in making decisions, we have AI that's learning from all those great recommendations that we're making. So that's actually the training model is observing these subject matter experts as they're making recommendations. It's just that we have a very guided system in how we do that. And that's really the 2-tier power set. That's what we're using for guidance.
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying.
Okay, so we're going to run right through it. Derek, Joseph, and then Saul, and then we're going to cut on the questions. So Derek, you're up first.
Yeah, thanks so much for your presentation. That this type of technology is sorely needed. I know, having been in business development for startups and small businesses trying to win servers and get across the valley of death that you mentioned. I also know Tommy Hendricks, so I think you're in good company with him on your team. I am curious to know, so I understand that you got the phase 2, and then this would be considered the phase 3. Via DLA and OUSD, from what I understand. Have you implemented this technology on a company yet, or you're still building that out in order to actually push companies through the innovation?
Sure. Yeah. So the platform itself is brand new. I've been using these principles literally for over 15 years, like I said, to guide businesses that I've run and to help folks with development programs. Like I said, we're one of the largest test laboratories in the country. We ran over 3,000 programs a year. For the 7 years that I was a senior executive at Dayton T. Brown. And, that's what test labs do, is unfortunately, they point out failures over and over again. So I would use this method basically to show people, where they went wrong and what they need to do next in order to kind of be successful and take it to the next step. So this is really taking that process that I've been comfortable using for the last 15 years and turning it into a platform that other people can use. One of the main reasons for AI is because I can't be at every instance to kind of guide people along the way. So we're building in a way to learn from subject matter experts that are guiding folks, and then also kind of looking at a lot of big data to make great recommendations for folks.
And then as far as business model, you would be continue to be paid by the government, or the fund you'd be paid by companies that were going through and being evaluated, or could you
Sure.
talk a little
So
bit about
it's
that?
definitely subscription, because what this is, again, it's all about users. We'll definitely have subscriptions for companies and organizations as well. But it starts off with a subscription model. But the exciting thing about this is we're looking at it as a new marketplace, and we're looking at a transactional piece, which actually will probably offer revenues that are much higher than subscriptions. Because if we're matching up subject matter experts with folks that need them, you know, it's kind of funny when you look at development projects, sometimes you only need like 8 hours or 10 hours or maybe say a month of somebody's time for them to guide you through, say, a difficult part of a development program. So what we're going to do is we're going to offer a way that people can connect with each other, charge a specific rate, you know, for services rendered, and then we'll take a slice of that as well. So those are the two big revenue streams that we're expecting.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. Hey, Dave, this is Joe. I work for the Air Force Office of Commercial Economic Analysis. So correct me if I'm understanding anything wrong, but I understand that your outputs are a set of objective scores along 9 dimensions that help decision makers make better investment decisions. What I don't understand is what the inputs are. What's the training data and the inference data that you're using to develop those scores?
Sure. So I'd have to probably go through the process in a little more detail in order to run that through with you. But what we're doing is we start off with low score. In order to increase your score as you're going through, what you need to do is we have, first of all, success factors that the subject matter experts are assigned to these 9 different categories. And then from each of those, there's proposals or there's technology reviews. And what we do is we look at specific levels of evidence that's available in order to acquire a certain score for each one of these 9 measurements. And if that evidence is missing, then basically we have to go and get that by either doing some prototyping, some testing, some evaluation, analysis, whatever it might be. So as you go through different TRLs, you're constantly increasing these scores until you get to the finish line. What usually happens in a lot of development activities is people just get blindsided within a development project. So lots of times folks are focused on just technology development. They're great technologists, but they're missing something about the team that's going to bring it forward. Or they've forgotten about, say, one of the critical application requirements. See, we look at the technology, and we're looking at the application, and we're making sure that every step along the way, we're increasing the scores of all those simultaneously. So as far as the evidence is really what's driving those scores to increase. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Hey, thanks, Dave. I appreciate it.
Sure.
Hey, Dave, this is Saul Cates from Talis. So I've had the luxury of being a technology strategist, executive, to try to help drive lots of innovation through a very old business sometimes. So does Nine High have some either capabilities or benefits of adopting your platform that helps bring the technologies not only up to the top so people can see their value and benefit, but actually help with the team transformations that have to happen? Because
absolutely,
teams have to pick this up and use it, I believe, right?
Yeah, so it's kind of funny. My first hire into this company was a young engineer who was really, his master's degree he was going for was focused on organizational behavior and intelligence. And that to me was the most important part, because like I said, there's a lot of technologists who love technologies and are passionate about them. But lots of times it's the team that's lacking. Think of it as a continuum. You have a technology and you have an application you want to get to, but it is the team. You know, and the team we break down into, you know, the personnel, the processes, and the finances. So those are the 3 buckets that everything within the team has to fulfill. And then what we look at is those specific success factors that are required. So if you want to look at just personnel, we can talk about training, we can talk about background. A lot of things go wrong when you just look at somebody's experience versus what their capabilities are against the upcoming requirements, right? So everything that we know is based on experience from before. But when we start to map, say, a technology that you're developing against a similar technology for a similar application, you'll start to have better visibility into what's coming ahead of you, so that you can build your team out ahead of time and have some preparation instead of relying on, well, I've done that before, I can do that again. Well, not necessarily, because it's a different application. So we really look at those forward-leaning types of aspects.
Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dave. From Nine High, anybody has any further questions for Dave can contact him through the chat. Yeah, also, Dave, there's one question for you on chat from OSHA. So take a look at it. Ramon Sanford from OSHA.
Sure, we'll do. Thank you very much.
Problem. Next is Vendita, and we're going to be hearing from, I believe, both Doug Solinger as well as William Smith, who are CEO and Chief Architect, respectively. Welcome, guys.
Thank you. My name is Doug Solinger. This is my second startup. We are data people, and what we've built is what we call Master Automation Solution. This is a tool that's built by data people for data people. So what we're doing is we're taking all the operational processes around managing data and automating that. Next slide. Couple of testimonials and things that we've done. First couple of customers, literally, they had 11 people in their data department, and they were able to actually take their 3 most talented resources and move them out of day in and day out operational and administrative resources and move them into the development side. They were also able to reduce some contractor costs, and their actual net ROI by bringing in Moz within 1 year was over $378,000. We've already been to the DoD. They have a huge problem with all the databases that they have because we focus with our focus is in Oracle, Microsoft, and some of the open source databases. We're also uniquely qualified to do software asset management. The DoD today has a $500 million contract with Oracle that they have every year or every 3 years that they renew. They have no idea how much they use. It's called a ULA. When we look at what we've built, we took it to the analyst community. Gardner Group was the first one we took it to. And they said, nobody has built anything like this to date. And then we have a very tight relationship with Oracle as a key partner to help us get into the marketplace. So we vetted this out in several different ways. And this goes across any industry because data goes anywhere in any kind of application. Next slide. So what we're really talking about is data resides in databases. And if you look at what it takes every time data is created and it lands into a database like Oracle, there's 37 different steps and clicks you have to go through, and it speaks a particular language. As a database administrator, you need to know that. Then you now have an Oracle database. In most environments, and if they have 40 Oracle databases, they probably have 400 Microsoft databases. Now you're speaking a second language. Then you have shadow IT pops in with all the open source databases that are out there. And as a data administrator within an organization, you have lots of different decisions you have to make and a lot of different content you got to keep on top of. And then that talent is very, very hard to get anymore. Next slide. What we've done is brought all those processes across all those different databases to one single UI. Literally, the database administrator or the database manager can literally go into one screen, look and see what's going on with their databases, and they can say, all right, the one that needs the most attention is Microsoft. I can literally, instead of going through 27 different clicks, I can pick the job that needs to be done, pick the database, hit submit, done. That means that low-level person can actually handle that work for the database person, allowing their higher level, higher talented people to move into more DevOps type work. Next slide. This is where we've got a tight relationship with Oracle. A lot of companies have a challenge when they're buying software assets like databases from Oracle, and they're probably the most challenged with this. They'll buy 100 databases, and somebody else will come in and they'll have literally used 150 of them. Well, it's very hard to detect that. We have one of 10 companies in the world that's gone through the verification process where we can detect exactly how much you're using at any one point in time. Also, this gives you a stepping stone for where you are if you want to start to do a digital transformation. So if you want to move to the cloud, we actually automate those processes in the cloud and give you this visualization of those assets. We do the same thing for Microsoft, and it's really more applied towards performance. Next slide. In a nutshell, what Moz does, it automates the process of managing your data. It consolidates it all into one place, and it gives you visualization. On top of what we've been able to do is we've also been able to add infrastructure security by tapping into AWS and Azure security portals, and that's all automated within the platform itself. Now, what I'm going to do is turn it over to Bill, and he's going to talk about where we're going with machine learning. Next slide.
Okay, hello everybody. Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about what we're working on right now with Moss, and like some of the others, things have been described today. We're using data that is already present in Moss. The slide shows, in steps 1, 2 here, how Moss actually collects quite a bit of data from database servers related to how the server and the database itself are performing. This is all viewable within our user interface. We've tested Moss monitoring and controlling 100 databases, no problem, running a variety of different database server softwares. And we have enough data here that we could easily predict and diagnose nearly any problem that would occur with these systems. But the volume and velocity of this data just makes that just humanly impossible to actually do that. And as we're all aware, machine learning can really allow us to use this data to go from data to tensors and start producing trained models, which will allow us to predict outages, issues with applications, issues with the server performance overall, and then just easily make that within reach of database administrators or really anybody who's supporting these systems. Next slide, please. So how we go from the data to trained models, as the models are trained, we rely on subject matter experts to help us label particular states of the models with outcomes as far as the server performance or server state. So as all these metrics and statuses are consumed into the models and assigned weights, we begin to slowly train the models, and whenever we do detect an anomaly or some problem, we try and use that in the future to predict problems with servers. It's sort of an iterative process, but the primary upside is that for all of our customers, then they benefit from already trained models, and can immediately use this to predict problems with their servers. Simply, and this is just one of the benefits to using our product.
Next slide.
Morning.
Okay. So, like I said, this is my second startup. The last one we did over $176 million. We've been, in the government space, and it was all around doing the same thing, managing data. Bill has been published books in this space, and he's actually been a DBA, and he actually will tell you he built this to actually help out eliminating work that he had in his previous organizations. And now we've just taken that and automated it into a cloud offering. Next slide. It's simple. We are raising capital. We can carry it on our own, but our plan is to raise money for more sales and marketing. We've already got $7 million in the development of the product. It is enterprise ready. We are selling it today. Any questions?
Go ahead.
Thank you for the presentation. So a common question here, right? I hear about a lot of the benefits of your technology, but can you actually quantify it? Would it be possible to show what's the return on innovation and starting by a project that we could do with your technology that would pay back in less than 12 months?
Most of our clients are getting payback within 6 months on it. And usually you're going to get benefits with efficiencies across the organization. You're going to control security into the different databases because we actually can control the users per database. Also, you can eliminate, basically manpower it takes to manage those databases. So for example, one client literally had a collection of contractors and each one of them were doing something different. With Moz, they were able to consistently manage all their databases and be able to manage any kind of issues and downtime. So that was one of the efficiencies they got out of it. Instead of paying $150,000 for a DBA, they were literally able to use a $60,000 resource to do the exact same type of work because it was now automated in the process and it's 3 steps.
Right. Well, thank you, Doug. I think it will be very powerful to see that and to get those testimonials and to account for what are the monetizable values and what are some other soft values that are connected to your technology. I think one slide on that can help in understanding better how do you bring value to organizations?
Thank you.
Doug, I have a quick question. Excellent presentation. Maybe two questions. One is, you spoke about Moss being able to monitor hundreds of databases. Could you speak a little bit to the scalability, please? And the second question was just to the point of how simplified the UI is. I can see absolutely the benefits of that. I was wondering if you'd ever imagine a case where certain teams in certain very specific scenarios might find that too simplified because they want to do some advanced engineering on it or something.
So scalability is, because it runs in AWS in the way we've developed it with Python and Postgres, the scalability, we've tested it up to 100, and that's kind of the most logical breaking, size, but we wouldn't be worried about running this up to over 1,000. I mean, that's not even, but then it gets to be, the manageability of it for anybody, right? So you usually want to break that into, chunks of 100, and that's as far as we've gone. We have been challenged to do it up to 1,000, but then even when we got into that particular project, it did get broken into, individual departments and chunks at that point in time. If there is a situation where, your second question, usually that would then be moved up to in a development side. So we're taking care of the maintenance and routine stuff. So if it ever gets beyond that, then there is a capability to actually download if there's a problem. We can actually display what that problem is. And then, so say that the low-level operator can then literally send that over to the development department. They can go in and fix that. So it's the simplicity of it is actually the elegance of the tool. And we've never had anybody want to go the other way, so.
Makes sense, thank you.
Wonderful, thank you so much, Doug. From Vendita, presenting on Moss. That was a great presentation, the second to last one for the session. Next up in pitching for Streamit is Bill French, who is founder and chief analytics officer. Bill, do we have you here?
There we go.
Hear you loud and clear. The floor is yours.
Great. Thanks, Josh. It's great to be here. And it's exciting to follow what is literally 12 brilliant presentations. So with that, I'm going to try to cap this presentation off with some really interesting things that we're doing at Streamit. We were founded initially to try to understand how do you put compute stacks on mobile public transit buses and achieve video analytics for safety, security, et cetera. And on this next slide, we can demonstrate some of the traction that we've ultimately achieved by starting with those kind of modest beginnings. Our goal was to try to understand how do we build really good hardware that can see and use machine vision to extract good video analytics. And so in the process of doing that, and over the last 3 or 4 years, we've gained some really good traction, both in smart city activity, as well as even in home building. We've got some pretty good visions concerning homes and how smart homes need to be extremely smart. In addition to that, we kind of stumbled on during the COVID downtime, the concept of a micro home on an energy platform, such as the Tesla Cybertruck. And so we have this other product line called Cyberlander, and we can talk more about that in the Q&A. But suffice it to say that we've discovered really good traction in highway analytics, safety and security, monitoring humans in areas that require deep introspection into what their actual activities are about, either nefarious or good. And lastly, we've really learned a great deal during the COVID period about analyzing hand washing of all things. So as a company, we've really focused on a number of different avenues to use an AI technology in order to improve analytics and data about that. On the next slide, there's one thing that, we've, back up one. There you go. One thing that we've understood about everything that we've done thus far is that all of our projects with IoT and AI and machine vision typically come with this challenge of one-offs. You know, all of us are kind of in that boat, and we're trying to understand, how do we do this better? And so on the next slide, in public transit, we looked at the complexities of typical hardware stacks that we see in order to guard safety or record video, or to even do simple things like passenger counting. And we said there's a big problem here. We have to compress that. And the way to compress that is to take out all of the redundant power supplies. Many of the communications things are redundant, and compress all of that information and technology into a very small box. Typically a box that can have multiple camera feeds as well, because central to everything we do is about vision and analytics. And on the next slide, we discovered that now that we have really good handle on the vision and the ability to gather data, how do you move the data? How do you organize the data? So we realized that there was something missing from real-time video analytics, and that was real-time data analytics that really served in a more elegant manner to support each of those processes. And so we built the Streamit real-time analytics platform to go along with our hardware. On the next slide, we then combined those two to create, what we largely regard to at Streamit as this comprehensive vision that attempts to compress, unify, and operationalize AI. And it really requires a much larger discussion, because at the end of the day, one of the things that are critical about building AI products is the ability to perform repeatability, but to also be able to deploy them very quickly. And so those two layers, the hardware and the software layer, is where Streamit has created some very distinct competitive advantages. And we've applied this to a number of customers. On the next slide, you can see where we've taken this architecture and we've spread it across the valley to understand how are vehicles moving about that valley on the highway systems. And this basic approach then leads us to understand, well, what are the problems and the issues that we're going to run into trying to do this at scale? Because scale is so important. And highway analytics really is the tip of the iceberg. We see our platform as being quite pervasive and quite beneficial in facilities, logistics, any place that things are moving about, whether it's machines, people, equipment, or vehicles. And on the next slide, you can actually see all of that information rolling up into what we call our Streamit Cloud product. So we've designed an environment that is agnostic to the entire perspective of trying to assimilate machine vision and AI outcomes in a way that anybody can use it. So we try to make them, a very easy veneer to use, and also one that's configurable. So it may not be a large screen that somebody needs to use our technology with. They may need a mobile app. And so we spent a lot of time investing. And by the way, we're self-funded. We are seeking strategic partnerships to broaden some of the ways that we use these technologies. On the next slide, you can see that our advantages at a very low level include, of course, rapid install. In many cases, we've seen the ability to use our platform and install it within days instead of weeks or months or even years. We have very simple configuration environments in there. It's sustainable, easily trainable, and we even invest a fair amount of time in the concept of software and hardware that is self-healing and self-cleaning. And so when you even say the word self-healing, you have to think about software that is smart enough, to be better software than it might encounter issues and things like that. Products that are self-cleaning means we put a lot of time and energy into choosing materials. So we're really good on the materials and the design and manufacturing side, and we're equally good on the AI side in applying these technologies. On the next slide, we can sum it up pretty simple. As a self-funded organization, and we're also funded through many of our revenues, we're really looking for strategic partners we know that there's a ton of challenging use cases out there where our platform would apply our competence in AI and our competence in hardware design and solution design. We think that brings us to a new level of where data science is going. And so we're trying to make this affordable luxury known as really crafty, clever data science emerge from these two layers that we've managed to put together: real-time data and, of course, real-time video analytics. Now, one of the things that separates us in a competitive sense from everybody else that seems to be working in this space, a lot of companies will focus very carefully on performing AI at the edge. We do that, of course, and AI in the cloud long after the data goes to rest. We took another layer of that and we said, look, you really need to be able to perform AI at the edge, in the stream, as the data is moving, as well as at the cloud. And we believe we're the only company that really thinks about those three layers with, equal deference. In addition to that, on the next slide, we'll demonstrate we got a team. We've been working together for about 4 years. We have lots of depth in different technologies, from mechanical to electrical engineering, as well as AI and modeling. And with that, I'll throw it out to anyone who might have some questions.
Thank you, Bill. Opening up the floor. I think Bob has the first question.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. Question, have you deployed your video monitoring system in any kind of petroleum or chemical factory? The reason why I ask that is because there's specific requirements of anti-explosion. Any IoT device that goes on the factory has to be anti-explosive. So I'm just wondering if you had to incorporate that into your system.
No, we haven't had the opportunity to do that, but that is an important one. In fact, I wrote about that in I think a watershed paper that I wrote back in 2016, where I recognized that the concept of IoT was flawed. And it's flawed because IoT, it may be able to tell you how hot a fire is, but it can't tell you what color the flames are. And flame color is like another data element. And so in a petroleum environment, I think the ability for vision sensors to be acutely aware of that which they're trying to detect tends to allow us to compress the concept of IoT into a vision sensor, really literally making the vision sensor a proxy for 10, 20, hundreds, maybe thousands of IoT sensors that it could replace. I believe that IoT is a subset of the Internet of Recognition, which is what I wrote about in 2016.
So do you have plans to just incorporate that to meet the needs of the chemical factories? I'm just wondering, because this is an area that we've looked at before in our company, and we haven't been able to deploy anything because of this requirement. So I'm just didn't know.
Right,
that.
It's a tough problem, right? Because IoT sensors, first off, much of the infrastructure cannot participate in the IoT, right? Not without retrofit, not without additional infrastructure changes. Whereas machine vision has the ability to participate with a 40-year-old valve. It can tell if that valve has been turned. It can even tell who turned it. It can tell what level of rate of flow that valve has simply by gauging, the nature of the valve. And so the answer is very brief. We have not had the opportunity to do it. We would love the opportunity to do it. And second to that question is, fundamentally, all of this is based on sensor technology. A vision sensor is no different than an IoT sensor. It's just has the capacity to capture light particles. And if you capture the light particles right, and you use the right sensors, the data possibilities in machine vision are way off the chart compared to where IoT sensors are able to go.
Just one last question as it came to my mind. Sorry about that, but I was just thinking about if you had the ability to do a 3-dimensional camera, and you could create digital twins. I
there's a lot of discussion in factories and about creating digital twins. BASF did it with their factory in Germany.
Right.
It's becoming more. It's becoming a big area, and I'm just wondering if you're able to, or anticipating that, and how you would support those efforts.
Yes, we are anticipating it. We have thought about it a lot. Haven't had the opportunity to do it, but we are inception partners with NVIDIA. We work closely with NVIDIA technology. And so thinking about digital twins, thinking about 3D imagery, it's all at top of mind for our engineers. And we are doing it, by the way, in our own factory at Cyberlander. Cyberlander, for lack of a better term, is a camper designed for a truck that doesn't exist yet, but will soon exist from Tesla. And that camper is designed to be invisible when you don't need it. And that particular product, we've sold almost 100 million in advanced reservations for that product. And in our factory in Austin, we will be using exactly the concept of digital twin technology. So yeah, sensors are very important to us. In fact, we also have separately, which kind of pertains to our home development, both micro home as well as our EcoMansion brand, sensors that have the capacity, that are patent pending, and have the capacity to do things that are at a much deeper privacy level, much deeper security level. And those are patents that we've been working on concerning sensors. So yeah, we've got some brainiacs here that are just constantly looking at how do you make a vision sensor even more capable as a data gathering tool.
Mm-hmm. Yep, great. We'll talk offline, but I'd like to learn some more.
Sounds good. Thanks.
All right. Hey, Saul Cates here. One question for you. You just sort of hinted on it at the end of that stream of consciousness.
Yep.
Data privacy and usage in sensitive locations. Hand washing in a bathroom, setting might be very sensitive, as you would imagine.
Yes.
But also the privacy of citizens and others that might be coming in and out of an environment that this would use. Can you talk a little bit about what you guys are doing or anticipate doing there?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, what you're hitting on is the idea that you need a camera that can't see, right? I mean, fundamentally, you don't want it to see everything. You want it to come to the table with a level of privacy. And so Lance King, our founder, has actually worked on this and has nudged this along into the patent stage, because camera sensors, well, we all know that security and privacy are utmost in our society. You cannot, debate that. But then when you get into a bathroom setting, it goes off the chart, right? You cannot expose anything, but you still want the analytics. So you still want the ability to see some sort of an operation that a human may be conducting. You can do that in a number of different ways. Most organizations try to use masking and things like that. Masking is not the right way to do it, though. You literally need to take a different approach, and that's one of the things that Streamit has done. Now, in our we call it the Healthy Hand brand. That's our internal term for it. But during the COVID downtime, we kind of focused on this as a potential for using camera sensors. And I say camera with that's a very loose term, because we're really simply trying to assess, did they follow the 10 CDC guidelines to get through that hand wash, and did they do it at least 20 seconds overall, or 5 seconds per segment? And we've had no trouble creating AI models to do that. And I don't think any company would really struggle at that. I don't believe that's a competitive advantage. What is a competitive advantage is to be able to deploy 10,000 hand wash stations and know in an instant who are the leaderboard people on that hand wash thing. Because in a healthcare facility, you might want to gamify that constant movement of hands over water to try to mitigate disease. Does that answer your question?
It did. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you, Bill from Streamit, you kept up our space and AI and the AI session last. So thank you very much. Bill's from a company called Stream It. I'll just quickly share my screen and talk about some of the awesome, amazing companies we heard from today and the panelists as well. So thank you, Bill. We heard from Stream It, Vendita, Nine High, and Flash Scientific Technologies. And that was to cap off our AI session. We had a fantastic panel from Liberty, Dr. Andrea Rotolo, from General Dynamics Mission Systems, Mark Rosinski, from Worldwide Tech Services, Cindy Mallory, from Now Vertical Group, Dave Whitmire, from Upheaval Investments, Cassandra Carruthers, from Diamond Edge Ventures, Bob Christopher, from Army Futures Command, Destry Grogan, from the United States Air Force, Joseph Fryer, from Dallas Cloud Security, Solomon Cates, from AeroVironment, Derek Gores, and from DITRA, Defense Threat Reduction Agency, Christopher Grazier. So this was the third of 3 sessions. We also heard from incredible space companies. We had a unique panel for the space event, and we also had an open topic, which was a really diverse and really interesting set of companies as well, with a strong and wonderful panel as well. So I just want to thank everybody who participated today, the panelists, for asking insightful questions and for being honest and being open with the startups, and for the startups pitching today, for sharing with us what you're building, as well as the direction and your ask. So thank you everybody for joining. And my reminder, up next is the ICT, the Information Communication Technology Showcase next month. Please be in touch with Yuval Herman, our Director of Events, for if you are interested into it. And also, if you are an AFWorks winner, or if you are a stakeholder from the United States Air Force, please be in touch with us about our upcoming event, which is geared towards Air Force stakeholders looking to support AFWorks winners as they transition from a phase 1 to a phase 2. So thank you everybody for joining. It was a wonderful, wonderful showcase, incredible companies, incredible panelists, and have a great rest of your day wherever you are.